Greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome back to yet another episode of the Snarp Fangle Podcast, episode 45. I am your host, Jake Metzger, along with my wonderful white Festivus celebrating Snarp Fangle co-host, David Reed. David, how are you doing today?
I'm doing quite well.
Good to hear. Excellent on this wonderful Festivus kind of day.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
A Festivus for the rest of us.
A Festivus for the rest of us, as Mr. Costanza would say. But yeah, so funny fact, this episode, if you're listening to it, was released on Christmas Day in 2024. It's funny how that works out, David.
Yeah. It's almost like we planned it, even though we totally didn't.
Yeah, I did not at all plan that. So I had some people ask me, are you going to upload on Wednesday next week to next week's Christmas? And I'm like, well, yeah, it's Wednesday.
Yeah.
You have to upload an episode.
Just another day.
Just another day, you know.
As one of my coworkers would say about pretty much every holiday.
Every holiday, just another day in paradise. Like, was that country singer that did that song? He's a country singer that does he's one of those guys that every single song sounds exactly the same, like Bruce Hornsby. Every single song he makes sounds exactly the same to me. Can't remember the guy who did another Phil Vassar. That was it.
I don't.
You partake in the country, David?
I mean, I've listened to country, but I don't think I've listened to that one in particular.
What's your favorite country artist?
My favorite country artist would have to be the great, the amazing David Allan Coe.
I agree. And just like a warm sip of the Tennessee whiskey, let's jump right into this podcast. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are here to regale you with another episode of Two Films, and we are here to talk about two animated holiday films. And our choices are these: 8 Crazy Nights, 2003, and Klaus, 2019. Probably maybe a couple films you haven't seen before. And spoiler alert, one's a lot better than the other.
Well, it depends on what you're looking for in a holiday movie.
Well, if you're looking for demeaning, wonderful, terrible behavior, you have one option. And if you're looking for wonderful, beautiful, interestingly animated behavior, you also have an option as well. Are they the same option? We shall see. Let's jump into 8 Crazy Nights, David. Directed by Seth Kersley. Written by Brooks Arthur, Alan Covett, Brad Isaacs, and Adam Sandler. Starring Adam Sandler, Jackie Sandler, Austin Stout, Kevin Nielsen? No. Kevin
Nielsen.
Okay, I didn't have the S in there. Kevin Nielsen, and of course, Rob Schneider.
Yes.
Had a budget of $34 million, box office of only 23.8. Runtime of 116 minutes. Oh, David, I really want to pass it along to you, but I have to get my thoughts out first. I apologize. So here we go. 8 Crazy Nights. What can you say? We watched this just a week ago, and let me tell you, oh man, this movie is on another level of awful, I would say. So before I hand it over to you, I just have to say that this film tested me in ways that no other Snarp Fangle 2 films set have tested me. I'm looking at the docket for the next year, and maybe there's some in there, but this one I think will probably be one of the worst ones we've done. But why, David? Why is it so bad, you may ask? Well, I'm so glad that we watched Click before this, because Click added so much good context to Adam Sandler, and for the lack of a better term, the maturity of Adam Sandler, or lack thereof. And I just want to say that film Click had a, very Adam Sandler-y humor, very obscene bathroom humor that's over the top in every way. That is genuinely funny and gets a laugh out of me. But that movie made me more like a disappointed dad in many, many, many aspects. Versus this, which just made me feel like a disappointed dad in all aspects. So I have to say, going from Click, you have a wonderful, redeemable, relatable aspects of all this movie, of the whole movie. And there's many aspects that are very, very, you relate to them. They hit your heartstrings, and the story is told in a way for you to care about. In this film, which is animated, but it's still an Adam Sandler film, came out before, has many things that stop you from relating to it and to find comfortability is not the right word, but everything
It's
it tried.
not a word, in fact.
What did I say? Comfortability?
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, in fact, it's not a word, so you shouldn't be looking for that in these movies. And you will not find it in 8 Crazy Nights, because 8 Crazy Nights kind of broke me in a way, mentally and hopefully. That's not a great use of that word. But David, save me. I'm going to pass it over to you. 8 Crazy Nights, give me your general thoughts, and then I will dive into specifics.
Yeah, 8 Crazy Nights was a movie that I think I just happened to see on like television one late night, you know? Just kind of like, hey, this is on, and you know, I'm winding down for the evening and there's nothing else on television, so I guess I'll watch this weird animated Adam Sandler film. And I think pretty much every time I ever watched it up to this point, it was never intentionally. It was more like, hey, this weird animated Adam Sandler film is on TV late at night when I'm winding down and there's nothing else to watch. Let's go for it.
The planets were aligned, as they would say.
Yeah. So I wouldn't say that I have a special love for this movie, other than just the fact that it's one of those things that it's one of the more bizarre films that I've come across, simply because it's bad in almost every respect. And yet it has kind of an endearing quality to it in a way. And though it was not a success, though no parts of this movie are particularly memorable, yet certain parts of this film, you know, they found their way into the cultural lexicon in the most bizarre way. So it's just one of those things. It's just like, this movie is a mess, but it's an interesting mess.
Yeah, it's hard to take your eyes away from this intriguing animated entry in the Adam Sandler verse. I heard just watching interviews and getting ready for this pod, I stumbled upon just a quote from a guy that in the behind the scenes, I guess, saying that, you know what, in retrospect, this film it was really interesting, and I wish it was really successful, because this was like Adam Sandler and everybody around him giving him like full access to an animated like portrayal of not just his kind of humor, but basically he could do whatever he wanted. And like the limits were breaking off of him. Like you can do so much in animation, and with the mind of Adam Sandler, it was really cool to see that take place. Now, on terms of how they executed their goals, are very questionable, I would say. You're correct. The endearing quality is what I would use as well. I guess you could say the animation, which is pretty dang good overall. But let's get into it. This film is like, we can give a little overview of what it's about. Basically, like, it takes place in the early 2000s when it was made. Adam Sandler is playing an asshole again, as you know, famously he does. And I kind of been looking at that, and I kind of like that aspect of him in a lot of his stuff, because he makes himself the hero and the main character, but he's like, you know, oh, I'm not perfect. That's what I'm supposed to be. But it's done in like the most unlikable way. There's many aspects, many characters, I would say, that are unlikable, but are they are unlikable. However, you get to like them, and there's things to find endearing in their characters. BoJack Horseman is an example I would point out. Like, there's people, I don't watch that show, but this is what I hear from that character is he's played by Will Arnett, and yeah, he's not a great dad, but you find endearing qualities in that character, and the series expounds upon that more as you watch along. There's other examples I can give as well, but I don't know. I would like to say good things first. even though this isn't the first thing I'm saying. But the animation's really great. I think some of the songs are actually pretty fun. And I even like Rob Schneider's voice acting in this. Like, even though he's like a couple characters, I even like the voice acting of Adam Sandler.
Yeah.
Like, I actually think he was great as, being Adam Sandler, Davey, the main character. But also his voice is Whitey. Yes, it's annoying, but that's not like my issue with it. Just I have different issues about it. I do find it really just funny that he does this voice. And how he plays the sister, I think it's Barbara is her name. I could be wrong. But his voice that he does for the sister, at times I forgot that it was Adam Sandler voicing her. Like I think he was genuinely pretty good.
Yeah, he does well in this movie. The voice acting in general, I would say, is pretty great in this movie. It's not like, the greatest
Pixar movie.
Yeah, it's not like the greatest of the great, but it's like what it was trying to accomplish in terms of the voice acting, it definitely accomplished those goals.
Yeah, and even like I don't think anybody does like a bad job voice acting at all. We'll go into it later, but 11 different animated studios were in charge of splitting up the work for this film, done in a 2-year framework, a 2-year time frame, I should say. And I think they did a really great job. And there's a lot of, I think the reason why I would say endearing in the animation, David, is because dang, it really looks like Iron Giant. Like the style, the animation quality, the just the way the faces and the eyes are done in some aspects remind me a lot of Iron Giant.
I never noticed that, but now that you mention it, yeah, it totally looks like Iron Giant.
Yeah. And we can get into some of the trivia, but I just want to lay it out beforehand. I did watch Saber Sparks, who's like this animation YouTube reviewer person, as well as Nostalgia Critic's take on this film. I haven't watched Nostalgia Critic in forever, but it was a very funny watch. Basically just taking the film and throwing it in a garbage and making fun of it is basically what he did. But Saber Sparks was a little bit more nuanced and talked about a lot of the behind the scenes stuff, the director and all that in cases. But in watching these, I was kind of interested to see. I'm like, you know what? I kind of liked this. But like when we first watched it, I'm like, you know what? That wasn't amazing, but I enjoyed myself. Kind of like with Click. Like it was amazing, but it was, enjoyed myself. But I think the difference between this and Click is that there's so much more redeemability in Click and relatability in Click because he's a father figure, because he redeems himself, because he learns his lesson, and because it's actually really sad, like that, genuinely really sad. And it makes you care about not just him, but the entire family, which how does an Adam Sandler movie make you care about Adam Sandler? Like Click does a wonderful job at that. And I didn't know what we had with Click after watching this film, because this film doesn't do any of that. It doesn't make you relate to Adam Sandler at all, which is fine. That's how his comedies are, I guess. But it doesn't give you any reasons to root for him. Maybe some minor examples, but nearly none. As well as this character Whitey, who's this are also our main character in this film, which ends up being mostly about him. And even then, I don't think there's many redeemable qualities about Whitey. I think it's I think there's more nuance you could take from this film, but I'm failing to dive into the nuance of why I should be caring about these characters. And usually I'm like, you know what? Let the artist paint, let them create whatever they want. But when you're given an example like this and other stuff we'll get into, it's hard to find it. It's hard to give it that, it's hard to let the artist paint after you see him do this.
Yeah. I think, that's kind of the major deal with this movie is there's not really a whole lot of, you don't have a whole lot of sympathy for the characters. I mean, obviously, Adam Sandler as the main character, Davey, is just a total asshole. And of course, you get his tragic backstory later on.
Yeah.
But it's not like it comes at a point where it doesn't have much impact in terms of how you view him.
Yeah.
And then you have Whitey, who is a much better person, but Whitey's just so odd and weird. It's really hard to feel bad for him. I mean, at the end, I think you kind of do. I think you kind of feel bad for what he's going through, and then when he gets vindicated, it feels good. But in the beginning of the movie, even though it's clear he's a genuinely kind and caring character, he's just really weird and off-putting. And with Adam Sandler doing that voice of his, makes it hard to sympathize or relate to him.
That's a technical foul.
Yeah.
Which I liked that song a lot, actually. I thought that was pretty funny.
That song is a banger, dude.
It's a banger, yeah, 100%. Let's go ahead and dive into some trivia for this film. So the first one we have here, and again, take this with a grain of salt. IMDb may be accurate, maybe not. I did look up something else that did conflict with some information, so here we go. For number one, the animation production itself was split, like we've mentioned before, between 11 different animation studios in order to stay within the film's 2-year deadline. Number two, according to IMDb, director Seth Kersley said all of the product placements were used without permission from their respective companies. This is not true. In an interview with Seth Kersley from traditionalanimation.com, he stated that, quote, "A big misconception with the movie is that we had all kinds of money from the brands, but it wasn't the case. I wanted to have real stories because it was taking place in present day, and I hate the cliche store names that you see in other animated movies. Basically, we got a list of brands that were fine being in the movie, and we added those brands for authenticity." Seth Kersley. Number three, Davy's parents are voiced by Adam Sandler's parents, Stan Sandler and Judith Sandler. This is Stan's only film appearance. He died in 2003, and his memory was dedicated in another Adam Sandler film, 50 First Dates. Number four, many animation fans have noted that the design style of the characters in 8 Crazy Nights is similar to the design style of characters in The Iron Giant. In fact, the majority of animators that worked on this film were, in fact, laid off from Warner Brothers feature animation after The Iron Giant was released. Yeah, it's really interesting. So, like, after that film came out and it wasn't a financial success, there was a ton of layoffs at Warner Brothers. And a lot of those animators went on to work on 8 Crazy Nights.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy considering how many different studios worked on 8 Crazy Nights, that you had so many ex-Warner Brothers animators sort of coming together through these different animation studios.
Yeah, and I think that goes to this was around the time I was born just right before this all happened in 97, so I wasn't like conscious for all this, but it's interesting to see the failure of Iron Giant, which was a genuinely wonderful film.
Oh, yes.
And a cult classic, maybe just regular classic considered
Launched
nowadays.
Vin Diesel's career.
Launched Vin Diesel's career. You get Shrek in 2001, I believe, or 2000, and you get this trend toward CG animation. In fact, the director of our next film, Klaus, Sergio Pablos, mentioned that when that was happening, he thought it was just a branch off of 2D animation, but he didn't know it would overtake 2D animation. And we'll talk more about Klaus later on. But it's really interesting to see that these folks who are looking for other jobs found them at other studios, but then this comes out, doesn't ever build up the animation, like 2D animation market at any rate. And so, I mean, it's just a bummer, honestly.
Yeah. I mean, this is kind of an aside, but you have to wonder sometimes if these like 2D animated films that happened on the cusp of the transition to 3D animation, if their failures were orchestrated in some way. Because there's because there's a lot of, if you look up the story of the movie Treasure Planet, there's a lot of people online which seem to think that Treasure Planet's failure at the box office was basically a conspiracy by Disney to essentially introduce the death of 2D animation so that they could move on to working entirely in 3D.
Huh, I never heard that before. Like, it was allegedly orchestrated, or it's theorized that it's orchestrated.
It's more like piecing together the details of its failure after the fact has led many people to believe that this was an intentional move by the higher-ups at Disney. Because, like Iron Giant, Treasure Planet is a genuinely great film.
Yeah.
But it was a box office failure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was just looking at the box office of Prince of Egypt, which I didn't get the budget. I think the budget was... I don't know what the budget was, but it got, I think, over 200 million at the box office. But I'm curious to see what the budget would have been, and the budget for marketing, because you also have to take that into account too. Because usually, like, if you're baseball parking it, if you get the budget of a film, you double that, and you get the marketing budget. Different film. There's a lot of different aspects to that. It's not always that's the case, but I don't know. It's just something to think about, I think, because you also have Brother Bear around the same time. That was a success as far as I know. And then you also have Prince of Egypt in 98. That was a little after. That was the same year as... No, it was the year before Iron Giant, because Iron Giant was 99, I think. I could be wrong, but... oh, yeah, it was in 99. So the year before Prince of Egypt came out and was kind of a success, but teetering there. A wonderful, awesome movie, by the way. If you guys out there haven't seen Prince of Egypt, yeah, it's a Bible movie, but dude, it's extremely well done. It's got Val Kilmer in it, so come on, bro. All right, moving on. Originally, and this is IMDb saying this, so I don't know if this is actually legit, but originally Sony Pictures did not want to participate in the animation game with the expense and risks involved. But Columbia chief Amy Pascal greenlit this movie anyway on a personal pitch from Adam Sandler. Makes sense because Sony and Adam Sandler went on to work on a lot of different movies going forward. And also that relationship carries on, I think, today to Netflix, because Sony and Netflix have a great relationship. They have a lot of series and movies on there, as well as like Spider-Verse. Like, that's not going to Disney Plus when that comes out on streaming. It goes straight to Netflix because they have a deal with Netflix. Number 6, the character of Whitey is based on the character Whitey from Adam Sandler's album Stan and Judy's Kid. He also appeared in Little Nicky as well. So this is interesting. This character was on one of his like comedy albums, and that was the first time you would hear Adam Sandler do that voice. So kind of interesting.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, that sort of definitely lends some context to what would otherwise be a bizarre and inscrutable character.
Yeah.
Although I don't remember, you said Whitey appeared in Little Nicky?
Well, that's what it says here, which made me confused. He also appeared in Little Nicky. So maybe it's just the voice of Whitey, is my guess.
Maybe.
Because I'm sorry. There's a character named Whitey in Little Nicky.
Oh.
But it's totally like unrelated. I think that's what they're talking about.
Okay.
Yeah, because
I was gonna say, I don't remember anything like the Whitey of this movie in Little Nicky.
Yeah. Is Little Nicky worth watching? Should we watch it, David?
I mean, it's another one of those. It's very Adam Sandler-y.
It's very Adam Sandler-y? Okay.
It's like this in the sense that it's another flavor of Adam Sandler that you may not have experienced before.
Final trivia thing is Adam Sandler won a reward for favorite voice in 2003 at the Kids' Choice Awards, and was nominated for worst actor in the Razzie Awards that same year. So before we dive into the recap, David, I do want to talk about briefly that I do genuinely want to watch Punch Drunk Love and Uncut Gems at some point. Not maybe together, but or not even for the podcast, but I'm super intrigued to see these performances by Adam Sandler, because he is a genuinely good actor. Like, and not in all aspects, but in the serious roles he has been in, he shows that he can bring his A game, I think.
I don't know.
Well, at least for Uncut Gems, from what I heard.
I mean, he does good serious performances in his comedy movies, like when it calls for him being serious. But I haven't seen Uncut Gems, but I've seen Funny People.
Funny People.
And that's that movie was kind of dreary.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. But yeah, Punch Drunk Love's another one I've seen like just off and on throughout the years. Like people talk about it being mentioned, and I don't know. It looks interesting. I'd like to watch it at some point. And I think he actually he won a Grammy? Not a Grammy. That's the Music Awards. He won some award for
An
it,
Oscar?
I don't know if he won an Oscar.
Golden Globe?
I think that was it. Golden Globe. The G word. Yeah, globe.
The G word.
G word.
The OG.
The OG, Adam Sandler. But I want to bring that up because, this guy's talented, obviously. Like, there's some great bits, and I think all of his movies at some point. But, man, for some reason, this film, I don't know, David. I kind of find, here's how I rate films for the audience's sake. I look at, is there more good or more bad? If there's more good, like maybe 60%, I would give it a thumbs up. If like I enjoyed it and there's more good than bad, right? But in this film, I have to be consistent. There's more bad than there is good in this film. So I think we'll just hop straight into the recap unless you have any final words to regale us with. He's shaking his head no, so let's do it. All right, so we hop into a city in I think it's in Manchester. No, I don't know the name of the town, but it's somewhere on the East Coast. Adam Sandler's Jewish. His name is Davey. He's the town drunk. And we open up with a wonderful, Dukesbury is the name of the town, by a wonderful narration by Rob Schneider that immediately jumps in to a Chinese restaurant where Rob Schneider is playing a Chinese man. A very racially insensitive Chinese man, we'll say.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, I think...
Or at least a racially insensitive portrayal, I guess you could put it as.
I think this portrayal was probably meant to be their take on the Chinese restaurant owner in South Park, I'm assuming.
Oh, in South Park. Oh. Does Rob Schneider play a Chinese restaurant owner in that?
No. But there's in South Park there's a character who's Chinese, basically the gag is...
Oh, I know who
he runs
the
about. City walk.
He runs the...
But the gag is he speaks an incredibly stereotypical Chinese accent, and it sounds like he's saying shitty walk.
Yeah. One thing I got to say about Saber Sparks and Nostalgia Critic is that they both had a big issue with Rob Schneider being this Chinese character. And yeah, he's like, it's a joke, right? Like, I get it. Like, it's supposed to be funny, and you're supposed to be like, oh, it's Rob Schneider playing a Chinese guy. But they both had issues with it, and it just goes back to the sense of, and no offense, David, millennial over there, but the millennials that you're not associated with, just you're a good millennial, I would say. But the bad millennials have this thing, who were raised on Family Guy, who were raised on South Park, who were raised on these incredibly offensive comedies, taking, this is what goes into the culture war and political stuff of today, where they championed, no, we can't have this stuff in media. Peter Dinklage goes out and says, you can't have dwarves playing dwarves. And then the dwarves don't have any jobs. It's like, okay, what did you do? What? Come on, Peter Dinklage. Come on. Or Pro ZD saying oh yeah, you know what? Only those people who voice act should be those voice actors. And it's like, dude, you have done so much damage to the voice acting community that it's not even funny. It's this trend of political correctness has kind of destroyed Hollywood in so many ways. So I just found it funny that Saber Sparks and Nostalgia Critic points out, because yeah, it's totally offensive, 100%. But that's the point.
Yeah, and I mean, it's kind of I kind of get where they're coming from, because it's like they're probably thinking about the idea that somebody's ethnicity is reduced down to a handful of stereotypes, and sometimes there's a time and a place for stuff like that. Sometimes it's not always the best time nor the best place. But I think when you just look at humanity in general, I think people generally find foreign accents funny.
Yeah.
And so I think what these people are missing is that it wasn't meant to reduce a Chinese character to a bunch of stereotypes, but it was just meant to highlight the natural humor in exaggerated foreign accents.
Yeah. Like South Park. Trey and Matt play those Chinese characters. And I've seen the clips of them in the booth like doing it. It's freaking hilarious. It's so funny. Yeah, it's terrible, but you know, it's supposed to be.
And you know, it's kind of this like, it's kind of this thing where it's like kind of like, I feel like it's kind of like the white man's burden or whatever, the white man's guilt. They're like, oh, these poor minorities, you know, that having their dignity, you know, broken down like this. But it's like, it's
let them speak for themselves.
Yeah.
You know?
And as far as I can tell, appreciation of like finding foreign accents humorous is a universally human thing. It's not just a white person thing.
Yeah. It's like it's everywhere.
It's they take their feelings of this like white man's guilt and they recontextualize it so that the things that should be the impulses that should be normal and natural for a human, they sort of recontextualize into, oh, we're doing it because we're imperialist, racist pigs or whatever, you know. It's yeah.
I don't know. I just something I observed just watching those guys, and I'm like, I wouldn't say that's a reason to hate this film. It's just something else to pile on about it, I think. Because in a lot of like research I've done, it seems like just people like to just pile on this film and not like do constructive criticism like we're going to do right now. So let's do it. So we have Davey in the Chinese restaurant just wolfing down some wonderful spicy ramen and egg bowls and whatever the dragon bowls I think they're called, and as Rob Schneider refers to them as. And we get he's totally drunk, he's totally off of it. I think he is asked to leave the restaurant by Rob Schneider, and he's like, all right, fine, I'll leave. And then he goes into his car with the key, and the a police car pulls up and watches him, and he's like trying to put the key into the keyhole, and he's gonna drive home, and the cop's like, hey, what are you doing? He's like, oh, I wasn't doing anything. I'm just gonna give my car a kiss before I had to walk all the way home. And then he proceeds to go behind the car and just give it a big hug and just regale it with like thoughts, words of affection is what I would say, David, and words of affirmation to his car,
definitely,
and just to the umpteenth extent. And, you know, to the extent of, it sounds like he wants to make love to this car. He loves this car. He loves this baby car so much. So, it was mama, ooh, I love you so much. And the cops are watching this. And this is one of the funniest parts of the movie for me, like, or one of the funny bits where like the cops are watching him and one is starting to cry because he's like, oh, he loves his car. Anyway, and then we get Rob Schneider running out of the Chinese restaurant with some paper in his hand yelling, he did not pay for his Dragon Bowl or whatever. And then the cops are like, he didn't pay. And he's like, oh, shoot. So Davey starts running. And then we get a musical performance. Yes, this film is a musical. The musical bit we get here is a song of Davey just talking about how he's the town nuisance and he goes around and causes havoc and chaos and lots of property damage, as we see in the sequence. He ties the people up in Christmas lights. He's rolling on a trash can lid, I think, of some kind, or a sewer grate. I don't know, but he's snowboarding it with it all over town. And he's running away from the cops. He's taking people's groceries, throwing them at each other. He grabs a woman's melons, but they're actually melons. And she turns around. She's like, you grabbed my melons. And then he trips over some people. He moons somebody. It's all about how he's just, I'm Davey and I'm terrible and I'm the alcoholic. He throws some snowballs at some deer as the family's watching these reindeer prance along. He's going really fast, and then he hops on a snowmobile and still running away from the cops. And then he causes insane property damage by destroying some ice sculptures of a menorah and Santa Claus.
Yeah, and one thing, I think this is the kind of the first thing the movie the first big misstep of the movie. Because you see this sequence and it's basically like Adam Sandler just being terrible.
Yeah.
And being like a general nuisance.
Mm.
And the song kind of sort of explains it, but it doesn't do it very well. And it's also not that great of a song, so you're not really tempted to really listen deeply to the words anyway.
Yeah. And he can't really sing, which isn't an issue, I think, but that's also there. Like, he can't sing.
Well, Adam Sandler can sing. He does this on purpose.
Oh, okay.
If you're not familiar with his comedy music, he does it like this on purpose.
Oh, that's right. Okay, yeah. Because I mean, I've heard 8 Crazy Nights the song multiple times.
But this is
like different.
All the music in this movie is essentially he's trying to port over his like musical comedy routine into the songs in this film, which totally doesn't work. But we'll get to that another time.
Yeah.
But like you kind of hear it in the words of the song, but it isn't very clearly explained. That what's really going on is he really hates the holiday season. And that's why he's drunk, and that's why he's rude, and that's why he's mean, is because the holidays just make him angry. They just make him really, really, really angry, and he generally hates his life during the holiday season. But we don't really have any of that context at this point in the movie. The song kind of like alludes to it, but not very well. And so he really just comes off as an asshole. Yeah.
And he finally gets captured by the police. We are cut to the next morning. He's in a courtroom. The judge is also basically explaining more about Davy and his history in the town. He's saying, we've been holding off on you for so long, and we're finally going to give it to you, man. 10 years in prison on the dot. And then out of nowhere, well, also before we get introduced to Whitey, we get Adam Sandler, who's like, oh, I'm still a great basketball player, and he's like, yeah, you were the town's best. And he's like, I can still do a jump. And he's like, huh. And he jumps like half a foot off the ground. It's really, really great. And then he's like, all right, I'm going to sentence you. And then Whitey all comes out. He's like, hold on 1 minute, Mr. Judge. I got something to say to you. And you obviously can tell it's Adam Sandler voicing that character. And he's extremely annoying. However, I don't think it's as annoying as people say he is. What do you think? Like, I think that this character is very, very annoying, but he's not Jar Jar Binks level.
Yeah, he's annoying. His voice is grating, but like it could have worked in smaller doses.
Yes.
If Whitey wasn't like the main character of the movie, if he was relegated to a more minor role, then his character would have totally worked.
And I think I think the voice is funny, but yeah, grating's the right word. But also, Adam Sandler has a range of voices he could use. Like, I've seen him in his comedy sketches. He can do more than just that. And that's a really funny one. And I get that's the one that he wanted to do. But you could have done the Adam Sandler, like, old man Adam Sandler voice, and just like, or maybe have Rob Schneider play Whitey or something, There was, or even, not Guilford Godfrey, what's his name? Who's also in this film, in a cameo, who's in Rat Race. Shoot, what was his name? I don't remember. But anyway, it could have been played by a number of folks.
Yeah. And
same thing with the Barbara, the sister, or whatever her name is, and it's, or Dolores. Dolores is her name, I think. No? Yeah, what is her name?
It's oh man, I can't remember now. That's the thing. The sister is actually
Eleanor.
Eleanor, there we go. I knew it was an E.
Yeah.
The sister character, Whitey's sister, is actually, the voice I think is actually much better.
Yes.
Well, much better for like longer periods of time.
Yeah.
Like,
it's still degrading, but to a lesser extent than Whitey.
Yeah. Whitey is funny, but like, man, he should have just been a minor character in the movie.
A minor character, a recurring jokester. You could even had him. I think one thing you could have improved upon this film is exactly what you just said, but also have him be comic relief, like insane comic relief, like see crappy stuff happen to him, like we do see in this film, but use it to your advantage and use it to like build up like just people being bad to him. And then at the very end, instead of it being about Whitey, when Adam Sandler is at his lowest, Whitey finds him. And instead of Adam Sandler hopping on the bus, he hops in Whitey's car and they have that like hard conversation. And instead of going to apologize to Whitey at this like festival or the ceremony at the end, you could have had him apologizing to Jennifer, for example. Like it could have gone a number of ways that probably would have made it better, but this is what we got in the end.
Yeah, this movie is kind of interesting because there's so many places where they could have done it better, and this could have been a great film.
This could have been a classic, like a holiday classic.
I think if they had managed to iron out all the weirdness in this film, like this might have actually been like a market counter to things like Treasure Planet and Iron Giant, and helped keep 2D animation living on a little bit longer. But unfortunately, we didn't get that version of the film.
Yeah, we didn't. So Whitey pleads the case with the judge, and the judge is like, well, Whitey, I'm just going to say it. Go ahead, and you go ahead. He's like, you help the youth on the basketball team. I've been doing it for 35 years. And he's like, all right, Whitey, go for it. All right, go for it. And so miraculously, Davey is let off under one condition. If he does anything illegal or anything of that nature, he will be getting 10 years in jail. So regardless of the mercy he's been shown, Davey is a character that does not care. The judge also says in a holiday spirit, like, yes, it is the holidays as well. Happy holidays. Good luck, Whitey. And we cut to a locker room scene where Whitey is put on his jock strap. We get to see a moon from Whitey with his white buns. Apparently he grows really white hair all over his body, which is a bit. And Davey and him have a conversation about, you're gonna help me with the youth basketball team, and this is gonna be great. And don't wear those shoes on the thing. Go in socks, And it's like, this character is really funny. Like Whitey is like such a people pleaser to like the worst extent possible. And he's also like almost 70 at this point in the movie. And he's still doing the same thing to get this, as we find out when they go into the basketball, what's the word? Arena? I'm not a sports ball fan. The court.
Okay. I was wondering what you were talking about. Arena.
The arena, yeah. So the patch is what Whitey is revealed. A 35th annual All-Star Patch, which is what like a yearly annual thing where the town votes for the most valuable community member in town. Basically, the person that gives back to their community the most. And Whitey has been after this for 35 years. And he says, it's going to be my year. And we get a scene of Adam Sandler or Davey coaching with Whitey. And they're coaching they're basically reffing the basketball game. And then there's a foul. There's a technical foul. And Davey makes fun of a fat kid, tells him to go put on a bra. Whitey says, you got very nice boobs, don't feel bad. And then the kid cries and runs away. People start throwing things at Davey, and just before you know it, this little Whitey fella who also has, I can't remember the exact like phrase, but he has like a men's size shoe on his right foot and a child's size shoe on his left foot. He then starts to have a seizure in the middle of the court after people throw things at Davey. And then Davey then takes him to the mall and starts talking to him about, it's the holidays. You got to be good. You can do all sorts of good things in your life. And there's plenty of ways you can improve yourself, like at the Foot Locker or the Tire Rack or the GNC and the Radio Shack. And this is when you and me were like, oh my God, this is like blatant product placement in this movie. But it's not the case. The director confirmed, no, it's just brands that were cool with them being in the movie, and we didn't have to pay them, or they didn't have to pay us.
Yeah, that's kind of an interesting. They wanted a realistic mall, I guess.
Yeah.
Considering that a lot of it takes place in this mall. So I kind of understand it. But yeah, when you first see it, it really comes off as just like product placement.
Mm-hmm. And it's funny because here's the thing. A lot of people say that this has really good animation, and I agree in most extent, but this scene is, I mean, it's well animated, but like the shading we see on a lot of different scenes isn't in this one. It's kind of missing. There's also like just inconsistencies, I would say, throughout the film.
Well, that's probably a symptom of being worked on by 11 different animation studios.
Yeah. And apparently in the, what was it? I think it was Saber Sparks in his video. He was saying that Seth Kersley, the director, was working remote with all the 11 studios and was getting the dailies every day and just really actually working on this film at a nice steady pace and was like efficiently directing this film. In fact, the guy went on to create and work on the Looney Tunes show back in the, I think, late 2000s, I think, which actually was really good from everything I know. I watched a couple episodes, and my cousin Andrew is like a diehard fan of that show. Like, he loves it. He's like, "Have you not seen any of this?" I'm like, "I have not." He's like, it's the funniest stuff. It's so well written. But anyway, we're in the mall. They decide to have some food. We are then introduced by the character Jennifer and her son as well. And I can't remember the son's name, but they're talking about Hanukkah and how he's excited for it. And Davy's being just a total douchebag to Whitey, no matter how good he is to him. And we're then introduced to these characters, and Davy doesn't make it a good situation. We are then shown that Davy and Jennifer have met before. They have a prior relationship, apparently. They're very aware of each other. He tries to talk to the kid, Benjamin, and he just is a total a-hole. But they walk away and then they continue on their day and their conversation about being a better person. So let's see. After this, we get a flashback to Davy telling him, "Oh yeah, when you were young, you were the top basketball player in like the 8th grade or something." It's like this kind of story. Let's see what happens next. They're in the mall. They're going around to stuff. They go outside. We get another sequence song sung by Whitey. And this is when the voice gets really annoying, but quite endearing, I would say. We're introduced to several funny bits. He's like, "Life's hot. It's kind of crazy. It's kind of a night when you feel nearly 5'3", And it's just, it's Whitey talking about his dream of being the person in the town and all this stuff, and
getting that
patch,
all-star patch.
An all-star patch. He then takes Davy home. They have more conversation, and then Davy like says, "I quit. I don't want to work with you," and runs outside. And Whitey then gets stuck in the snow, and this is a weird scene. The deer are then they come out of nowhere, and Whitey communicates with them, and they help Whitey get out of the snow. Davy goes into his trailer he lives in. We are then introduced that, he lives there. His parents died when he was a young age, apparently, from what we're shown. There's a letter on front of their picture that says to Davy. It's unopened. The deer then push Whitey back home. We are introduced to, is it Dolores? I keep forgetting her name, the sister. And they have a conversation about just all this stuff about Davy and how he has hope in him when nobody else does. Eleanor is her name. They end the scene with her playing the trombone and him reading, and them just enjoying their Christmas Hanukkah evening. What's next after this? Next is the porta potty scene where Whitey is volunteering and doing all these different chores and tasks around town, being treated horribly by like everybody. These construction workers are like just demeaning and just treating him like garbage. And he's like, "I'll clean out the porta potties." And he goes and cleans out the porta potties. Davy's in one of them. He says, when you go to sleep in Dukesbury, you wake up in Pukesbury. And then he kicks Whitey into the porta potty, falls down the hill, and Whitey's covered in poop. David, what happens after that?
Well, he gets up out of that porta potty and he's all nasty. And, Davy tries to hose him off and it doesn't end well. He's frozen in poopy ice.
In poopy ice.
And the deer that helped him with his car,
yes,
at some point come and lick the poopy ice to melt it so that he can be free. It's rather bizarre. This film did not need magical animals. It did not need magical animals. So I don't know why they're in here, but they are.
Yeah, it's I don't know why they're here. There's some magic forces in this
and
film.
they make weird noises.
Oh yeah, they're voiced by Adam Sandler.
Yes.
That's right. Yeah, they're like oh God. So next scene, we're at a basketball game. Whitey is taking care of young Benjamin, who we were introduced in the mall, Jennifer's son. And they're at a basketball court and Whitey's just taking care of him while his mom works a double shift at the mall. And then Davey walks up and he's like, hey, let's play some basketball. And there's a bunch of like grown men after work playing basketball. They're like, hey, we're not playing basketball with you. And Whitey's like, we got no beef with you guys, you know? And he's like, well, come on, midget, let's do a game. And so Davey convinces Whitey to play some ball. And so the Benjamin and Davey decide let's get it done. And so they go and they decide to make a bet that whoever loses gets to eat a fat guy's jockstrap that's over there. So, all right, cool. So they do they have a game together. Whitey gets knocked the F out. And then Davey's like, oh no, is he dead? No, he's not dead. He is just completely knocked out. Puts him on the bleachers, tells Benjamin to, all right, let's do this. And then they just go to town with their shirts off and they just school these dudes. And we are shown that Davey is an incredibly competent basketball player, just like real life in Adam Sandler. He's an extremely competent basketball player, will play anybody in Brooklyn. And they proceed to beat these fella dudes. And this was like the first scene where I'm like, okay, this guy is actually somewhat like, he's got a talent.
Yeah, this is the first this is the first time we see Davey with any redeeming qualities, because not only is he a skilled basketball player, but he's also very good at coaching Benjamin in the moment, because Benjamin's just this little skinny kid who's not very confident playing against some grown men, and Davey's able to like offer him like in the moment coaching that helps him play his best, and they end up beating these guys against all odds, basically.
Yeah, and it's cool because like him and this kid's relationship is pretty, like you said, it's pretty cool to watch. And like, yeah, he's a jerk and yeah, he's not the best role model, but he's showing the kid how to stand up for himself. And that's where his character works best. And out of every scenario of this film, this is where his character shines. And that's basically to show like, oh, this character is redeemable. All right, cool. And then he goes back to just being a complete a-hole. We're then proceed with the scene where Davey is driving Whitey home. Whitey is still sleeping. And there's another song with Adam Sandler singing, and I don't know the name of what was the name of the lady who's singing this, David? You were mentioning it earlier.
I think, are you talking about Jennifer singing?
Yes.
It's Alison Krauss.
Alison Krauss, yeah. So, and anyway, there's some flashbacks involved. There's a joke of Whitey talking about all this stuff. There's also a bit about the mayor and his wife or supposed wife, and just some funny stuff that happens. And it's all about regrets, moving on, what could have been, what happened. And speaking of what happened, one of the guys that lost at the basketball game, as Davey is returning home, driving Whitey, driving Whitey in Whitey's car. He gets to his little trailer, and the trailer's on fire. The guy who had to eat the fat guy's jockstrap still has a jockstrap in his mouth and is lighting his trailer on fire. Davey rushes in, grabs the envelope that his parents wrote to him. Doesn't grab the picture, just the envelope, and then runs back out. And Whitey's like, "Well, you'll stay with my sister and me, so let's go." And as Davey is defeated and sad, he then accepts and goes to Eleanor and Whitey's house. Eleanor freaks out and is just like, "Is this?" I can't do her voice, David. Can you do her voice?
It's like,
I don't know how to describe it.
oh, it's basically, I think this is another example of them trying to do like a South Park type thing, because
okay.
What's his name? Kyle, the Jewish kid in South Park.
Yeah.
His mom has a voice that's kind of similar to this.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
So I think they were going for that kind of vibe, just like Rob Schneider, I think, was going for the Chinese restaurant owner in South Park vibe too. That's the best way I can describe it. I can't do the voice.
I can't do it either. I can do Whitey like a technical foul, but I can't. If I hear Eleanor, which I don't want to hear right now because we're recording, but if I hear it, I could probably do someone in right impression. But anyway,
yeah, I have a coworker who could do that kind of voice really well. He's not here right now.
Yeah, maybe we should have him on the podcast. All right, so we are then introduced to a technical foul, the best song in the film, arguably. And it's going over the ground rules for Davey staying at Whitey and Eleanor's place. And it's hilarious. It's raunchy, incredibly inappropriate. And again, the music is really interesting in this because I think you're right. Adam Sandler's intentional with the way he's using his voice, but I feel like they should have gone in a different direction.
Yeah, that's the thing, is he's trying to emulate what he does with his comedy sketches, which if you haven't heard his comedy music, a lot of it's pretty funny, but it doesn't really work in this context.
No.
Like, technical foul, now this is a banger.
It's a banger song.
This song definitely has cemented its place in the movie. And I think the song towards the end, where the one part that went viral, that one works too. Mm-hmm. But most of the rest of the song should have been scrapped, and they should have brought someone else in to write them.
Are you talking about the ending song?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So I agree. Like the song that goes viral every Christmas is the best part of the song, but it's only one part of the song out of a whole song that's just blah exposition out the mouth of every character and doesn't rhyme or have any flow at all. It's funny because it's like, oh, this is hilarious because this is not what a song's supposed to be. That's the joke, right?
Yeah.
But it could have been, again, there's these things that hold this film back from being great, and that's one aspect of it. Is it interesting to look at and admire? Yes. But it holds it back from being really great. All right, so we get it's really good. They put all their feet in hot warm water. They even have one thing that's for the guests. So it's just a bunch of little itty bitty details you'll see throughout this whole film. That's why one of the animation's really good, because you'll just see these little details throughout everywhere that are just little in jokes and everything, and it's funny. It's really funny. It's well done in that aspect. We then get a montage of Whitey, Eleanor, Davey growing a relationship together, living together, helping each other out until we get to the ice skating area, ring, whatever. We are shown what's it called? 30th anniversary, the All-Star Patch vote. Davey throws his vote in there and says, "Good luck, old man." And he's voting for Whitey. His whole aspect and view of him has changed, and he's growing a soft spot for the old guy. Until once we are introduced back to Benjamin and Jennifer, who are at the ice rink, And Whitey just starts going over all of Davy's dirty laundry and all of his backstory and how his parents died when he was young on the same night that he had a big basketball championship. Yes, he won the championship, but his parents passed and he was informed after the game. And it's like, oh man, this is pretty sad. This is terrible. I feel bad for Davy. But then Davy asks Whitey at some point in this conversation to politely stop. Like, hey man, please stop talking about this. And when Whitey doesn't stop talking about it, he then goes on to say more. And as he's saying more, Davy just gets angrier and angrier until the culmination of the scene happens. He, verbally abuses both Whitey and Eleanor and says, I hate you guys, blah, blah, blah. And I'm leaving. And he's like, and you're bald, Eleanor. And he grabs her wig and throws it to the ground. Pretty sad stuff. I don't know what the coach is supposed to look like. The coach in this film it kind of looks like Steven Spielberg in a way, but not really.
Yeah, he's
it's
like
funny.
Jewish Steven Spielberg. Like, I mean, like more Jewish.
More Jewish Steven Spielberg. Okay.
Like more Jewish. Like, I know he's already Jewish.
Yeah, he's already Jewish. So you know what Whitey is, David? He's a more Jewish version of Adam Sandler. That's what he is. It's a technical foul.
No, but like, yeah, the coach is kind of like, it came out wrong when I tried to say it, but it's like, it's like if Steven Spielberg looked like a more stereotypical Jewish man.
Okay, all right. I know stereotypes. I know what you're talking about. I wanted to see how long we could stretch that silence there when it happened. After this blow up, we are given a more contextual scene about Davy's relationship with Jennifer. Something that Whitey didn't talk about that he tells Eleanor after he runs away. And he says, yes, they were two lovebirds. They were kids. They would have been a great pair. But then he decided to cast everybody out. Oh no, he's still here. My bad. He's still here saying all this dirty laundry. So really sad stuff. Whitey allows the reindeer into his house. Eleanor picks out a wig for the night. Davy is drunk off his rocker, decides to break into the mall, and is kind of like singing, yelling out Jennifer. He's like just being really abhorrent and just real sad and drunk. And then out of nowhere in the middle of the mall at night, middle of the night, when the mall's closed, you get all of these different product placements that we were introduced to before. But now that mascots have come to life, there's a coffee cup. There's the chick from C's Candy coming to life. Sharper Image has a massage chair come to life, and of course, a GNC protein jug voiced by Carl Weathers. What a scene!
not just voiced by Carl Weathers, but specifically you have a see-through like nightgown from Victoria's Secret that comes to life that's voiced by Tyra Banks.
Oh yeah.
And you have
the guy from Foot Locker who's the referee.
And you have the Carl Weathers as the GNC pill bottle,
sorry.
Like reacting in a very like shall we say lusty manner every time she says or does something.
And it's funny because it's supposed to be like a see-through nightgown, but it's a nightgown just floating around that if somebody was wearing it, it's invisible. So it's like, that's the gag. Yeah, he's like, look, she's like, have yourself a cry. He's like, oh!
And then you got the panda from Panda Express.
Yeah. So they go ahead and I believe they're singing in this scene.
Yeah, they're singing. It's a song about, they're basically trying to convince Davy to, not hold his emotions in anymore and just have a good cry. And Davy's like singing back at them angrily, it's like I don't need to, basically.
Yeah, and so then they said, well, wait, the card when you were young, how about you actually read it? And so Adam Sandler decides to, well, I am strapped to this chair and I have no choice, so I guess you spirits of capitalism will have to show me my card and redeem me in this film. So they show him, and they open it up. It has some scribbles and two pictures, one of him on the basketball team with Jennifer and one of his two parents. They say, "You're beautiful, son. We love you. We're so proud of you. You're 12 years old right now, and we believe in you, and you're going to win this championship." Davey just breaks down crying in a very beautiful scene, by the way, and framed very excellently, I would have to say. But it's cut short because as it's zooming out, we're introduced. Hey, the two cops that were chasing him in the beginning of the film, they find him in the mall and they start arresting him. Davey goes full Jason Bourne and handcuffs their legs together in a very awkward manner and runs away. We then cut to the let's see, the annual All-Star celebration ceremony, we'll call it. And so they're at the community center. Whitey and Eleanor show up in their car. Jennifer and Benjamin show up. A homeless guy talks to Jennifer. He's like, "I may be dirty and smelly, but I could be a good date." Very creepily. It's hilarious because Eleanor's wig is so tall, well, supposedly so tall that she lies in the back seat and Whitey has to help her get out. There's a funny bit about this guy who's like, "Is that you, Eleanor? Oh, I love you." And then she's like, "No, you don't." Hiya. There's more to this context, but let's move on. We then get the cops looking for Davey in the town. They don't find him. Davey hops on a bus for New York and it's bound for there and he's on his way. We then are cut to, the ceremony where our speaker, played by, is it Mark Nielsen?
Calvin
Nielsen is speaking. We see Rob Schneider, Chinese restaurant dude, ripping his shirt off, so excited that, let's get this year on. Happy Hanukkah, baby. And
well, I mean, I think what's happened there is, I don't know what the mayor's speech is weird in this movie. He's like doing all these he's like doing like a comedy routine, and everybody's like laughing like maniacally to an absurd degree, and they're like throwing up, and the Rob Schneider's Chinese restaurant owner like rips his shirt off and bangs his head on the table.
We have the basketball coach doing the, I don't know what kind of dance that is, but the Russian dance where you're on your knees running around deep. The deer are pooping excitingly outside because they're laughing so hard.
Yeah.
Everybody's having a ball.
I genuinely don't understand what this scene was supposed to be about.
Yeah, I think you could have easily cut this out. I forgot about they shout out this tall kid who has
Harry Pitts
for some reason. During all this, we see Davey on the bus. He's heading to New York. He sees different parts of town that he remembers from his childhood, him and Jennifer spending time there. He then looks out. He sees the building, the community center over the ice. Then boom, randomly, a simple thumbtack popped all 8 of the tires on the bus. And, well, the bus ain't going nowhere. So Davey's like, well, I guess. Oh, and he looks out the window and the menorah made out of ice across the lake is beckoning to him. And in some ethereal manner, Davey says, "I got a job to do." He goes and runs back to the community center. We cut back to there, and Davey is greeted by the reindeer. The reindeer don't like him and they don't trust him because of how he treated Whitey. He's like, "Look, I'm gonna do a suplex. I'm gonna pull my underwear up."
He's gonna give himself a wedgie.
Well, that's what it's called. Thank you, David. This film has destroyed every brain cell in my brain, so thank you for saving me. So he gives himself a wedgie. For some reason, the reindeer consider that redeemable, and they let him peek through the windows.
Yeah, that's another thing. It's like, why did the reindeer need to see him give himself a wedgie in order to accept that he was here to apologize to Whitey? He could have just said he was here to apologize to Whitey, and that would have been that.
Yeah. Then we have the cops show up at the community center. The deer make a deer pyramid and protect the view of the policeman from Davey, or the Davey from the view of the policeman. We then see that, oh man, Kevin Nielsen is going to give the award, and it goes to this fella named Tom Baltzar, I think. And it doesn't go to Whitey. He's super sad. It's God, I am terrible tonight. I want to say Don Knotts, but that's not who plays this guy.
It's you guessed it when we were watching the film.
I have it listed here.
Yeah, you guessed the name when we were watching the film.
I don't have it listed here.
I can't remember it.
Gosh
now.
Dang it. The guy from Rat Race,
Yeah.
John Lovitz. That's it.
Yes.
It finally came to me.
Yes.
Thank you, David. So John Lovitz goes and accepts his award. Apparently he bought a new billboard or scoreboard, I think. Scoreboard for the basketball court. Thank you. And Whitey is brokenhearted, tries to cheek it on the chin. And Eleanor and him leave, and they walk out of the building. And also Davy's crying. He's sad for Whitey. He's so brokenhearted over it. And then we cut to John Lovitz giving a speech. Turns out he has a hook for a hand, which is out of nowhere. Rob Schneider, a Chinese restaurant guy, just pops up randomly. He's like, oh, wow, that caught me by surprise. And, and then he sits back down shirtless, by the way. Davey sneaks in. The cops grab him. They're like, yeah, your ass is busted. There you go. And they're like, yeah, Davey, the juvenile delinquents at age 30 is finally caught. Hooray. And apparently Jennifer gets up after that and says, guys, let's talk about this. And so basically, I don't know how to explain this.
Well, no, what happens is he goes in and he wants to say something, and at first nobody wants to let him speak. They just want him arrested and out of there, so they can continue on with their celebration. But Jennifer stands up and is like, okay, let's let him speak. And then one by one, people are like, yeah, let him speak. And it's quite bizarre.
Yeah, the woman with 3 boobs finally convinces Kevin Nielsen to let him speak. And he's like, all right, triple nipple. I mean, Miss Selson, let's have him speak. And so he starts talking. He's like, I know you don't like me. I know you all have an opinion about me, but let me tell you about Whitey. And then he starts the song, David.
Oh yes, the song.
Excrucious amounts of exposition, excrementing exposition throughout the entire beginning of the song. And it's actually pretty funny. It has no flow, no care in the world, but it does the job of a final climactic event that's happening here. And I don't know, what was your thoughts of this whole bum ditty sequence?
This is one of the songs. See, if this and Technical Foul had been the only very Adam Sandler-y songs in this movie, and they'd got someone else to write better, more memorable songs for the rest of the movie, I think it would have worked really, really well. As it stands, every song in the movie is like this, so it's just bleh.
Yeah, it's definitely. I have fun watching it.
But it's still a fun scene, but it's this, and the bum ditty part is
great.
Yeah, it's great. But it's the weird Adam Sandler-iness of the song itself, the lyrics, the exposition. I feel like it would have actually worked if we hadn't been had to sit through that kind of thing being every song in the movie being that kind of thing. If that and Technical Foul had been the only 2 songs that were like that, that would have been a refreshing sort of change of pace from the more normal songs that they might have brought somebody else in to write. But as it stands, it's just way too much of Adam Sandler style comedy songs, and it's just at this point it's just it's still a good scene, but it's just it kind of brings it down where it's it could have been so much better.
Yeah, and when you get to the crescendo of bum bomba, that whole, what was it, 30, 45 seconds of singing, it's the best part of the song. It's really great. If only that happened maybe one more time and we had an actual song with general chorus, bridge, and verses, that would have been nice instead of talking in the song and going forward. We have Adam Sandler telling everybody what he did to Whitey. He was an a-hole to Whitey. He regrets it. We have some guys saying we were watching Sunday football. Whitey was so kind to come in when we lost signal and stand on the TV the entire time with a coat hanger, you know, and we laughed at him when he got struck by lightning. It was amazing, and we regret it. And then there was a lady who, when Whitey was young, she said, "Oh, we should go out to the dance in high school." He still looks like 70 years old in this flashback, which is hilarious. And she stoops him up and says, "I'm actually going with this guy." And, tons of people treat Whitey terribly. And for some reason, everybody starts singing Bum Biddy Biddy Bum. And it's one heck of a sequence, we'll say.
Yes.
All right. So after that, we get everybody just singing and dancing. And we cut back to Eleanor and Whitey in the car. And Whitey's like, I gotta go home. Not my real home, but my home away from home. And they go to the mall. And being this old fella, he likes the mall. He's an old guy. He likes to see all this stuff. And this is where he feels joy. You know, again, the capitalism theme just coming back in, which is definitely not what this movie is trying to do. It's just funny that that's the case. But yeah, he goes in there. He's like basically talking to the mall in this scene. And then out of nowhere.
Yeah, he's praying to the mall.
He's praying. It's like I think Eleanor says, it's like a sanctuary. Like apparently this is some place of worship for Whitey.
Yeah, the mall is his god, I guess.
Yeah. So anyway, he's talking.
Whitey bows at the altar of capitalism.
Americana capitalism here. And then let's see what happens. We see Davey. He's like, "Hey, Whitey, I'm sorry." And he's like, "You got nothing to apologize for. Nobody, you were right. Nobody likes me and cares about me." And then we see the mayor, and the mayor's like, "Hey, Whitey, I'm sorry, man, but Davy Stone has convinced us that you've done an actual good thing in this community, and we want to reward you for that." And then everybody starts coming out into the mall and saying, "Yeah, Whitey, you're the best. You've done it, man. You're great." John Lovitz comes in. He's like, "You can have my 35th sticker patch." And he gets his 35th sticker patch. And because that one act of kindness inspires another, David, which we will learn in the next film as well, everybody starts raining down with their patches onto Whitey in this scene. And it's just beautiful. It's so sweet. And Dewsbury is most hardworking man is celebrated. And then we're getting to the end of the scene, and I'm sure they had to write this in last second, like Happy Hanukkah, Harry, but they didn't say Harry. They said Happy Hanukkah, Davy. And they give it a hug. They cheer on Whitey, and Eleanor ships Jennifer and Davy because, they used to be in love and now they do. And then Whitey is so overcome with joy that he instantly has a seizure of happiness. And he's like, "This is the happiest seizure of my life." And then the movie just cuts to black.
Yeah.
And then we're given with the reason we came for this movie in the credits sequence. And in the credits sequence, we are given the wonderful live version of 8 Crazy Nights, the actual song that this movie is supposedly based off of. So that's 8 Crazy Nights, ladies and gentlemen. David, final thoughts.
Yeah, so many things could have been better in this film. It could have been great. Like, if the music were better, if Davy's characterization had been more likable, more sympathetic, more relatable, if there had been more played into the romance aspect between Davy and Jennifer, if Whitey had been more of a minor comedic relief character instead of like the central character of the movie.
Yeah.
all these different things. Also, too, I think at this time, like the idea of an adult-oriented Hanukkah animated movie being like a box office hit was just not feasible. So I think if this movie had been a little bit more family friendly, that probably would have worked in its favor.
Yeah, there's so many things that you just listed off that would have made this film instantly better. And yes, I think that if they did kind of go for a more family friendly approach, like kind of frame it in some of the more family friendlier Adam Sandler films, and still have that humor in there, but not to like.
Yeah, it still could have,
to the extent
it still could have been crude.
Yeah,
but just not as much as it was. Like if it had been more to the level of like say Click.
Yeah.
If like, because that has plenty of crude humor, but it's more restrained, more subtle, more restrained. So if
I wouldn't say subtle's the word, but I get what you're saying.
There's more jokes that younger kids just won't get.
Yeah, correct. Yeah,
kind of a thing. Where this 8 Crazy Nights just kind of goes over the top. Characters are swearing all the time, and they're just constantly saying dirty, crude things. It's just like they could have toned it down, dialed it back, and I think that would have probably helped this movie a lot more at the box office.
Yeah, and apparently, allegedly, when the test screenings were happening, that was the kind of feedback that the way they were given. They said, "Hey, like you got to tone down the voice. So, like the voice of Whitey is really annoying. Okay, we'll change it. No, don't change it. Just it's really annoying." And there's a lot of changes they wanted that they said, "Hey, make this different and improve upon this because these aspects are really, really annoying and terrible and overbearing." And they kind of didn't take any of that from what I've learned. But it's funny how the internet is like looking at this film with like an eagle eye lens and is like trying to, like, I was just it's free on YouTube right now. We watched it on YouTube, and I'm going through the comments here on YouTube, and they're all saying, "Man, I remember watching this as a kid. And dude, when he opens the letter, it just gets me every time. I'm hearing my computer crying. Like, I love this film so much." Like, there's its fans. But I just think that I remember we talked about that Adam Sandler's an acquired taste. Maybe no, he's not an acquired taste. It's I think he's Adam Sandler. If you're into Adam Sandler, you will like this. But I'm sorry, David. First time in 2 film saga, I'm gonna have to not recommend this movie. This is just not one for me.
Well, I mean, the recommendation is pointless in this case.
Yeah.
Because if you're down with the Adam Sandlerisms, you'll get something out of this film.
Yeah.
If you're not down with the Adam Sandlerisms, it's best to just skip it.
Yeah. I'm intrigued to see what Jack and Jill and Grown Ups, what redeemable qualities are in those, if any. I don't know. Have you seen any
of those?
I'm joking. I'm sure there's some good things in those films.
I think I've seen those, but yeah, there's definitely, like, even if you're a fan of Adam Sandler, there's definitely Adam Sandler movies to skip.
Oh, yeah.
But, like, this one, as terrible as it is, if you are a fan of the Adam Sandler-iness of Adam Sandler, you'll still get some entertainment value of this movie.
Oh, yeah. 100%.
Like, it's not something, it's one of those things where it's like, it's not a great movie, but, like, if you like Adam Sandler, it works well enough that you'll still get something out of it. But don't go into if you don't like Adam Sandler, it's best to skip this because this is like by far the Sandleriest of all Adam Sandler movies.
It's a struggle, I would say. If you're like just, an average movie going member of society, I don't even think you'll get through this film. Like it's really hard to get through in that sense. But again, like if you're a fan of Adam Sandler, you'll probably enjoy this a lot. I just think that it kind of just fails in every department it tries to be good at. Animation, besides animation. Well,
it doesn't fail in every aspect.
No,
just in most aspects.
Just in most aspects. But
because there's a few brights. The animation's good.
Yeah.
And also There are a few bright spots in terms of like the story and the characters and the music, but like there's just a few bright spots. Most of it kind of falls flat.
I think there's an argument that could be made that the reason why we love all the little bright spots in that movie, like him putting the vote in for Whitey, him apologizing to him, them bonding in the house when they move in together, they're so rare throughout the film that you cherish them every time you get it, every chance you get, David. And I feel like there's an argument that can be made that that's the point of this film, is it to be so crude and abhorrent that you savor every little piece of good in this movie that you can. And also, I want to just completely reject the meta narrative I found on YouTube about this film being about capitalism, because it's totally not that. Like, I mentioned it briefly in some of the scenes. Like,
is that like an internet rabbit hole or something?
I almost dove into it, but I saw it and I immediately rejected it. But there's a case to be made that people have made about this film that, it's about capitalism and about the craziness of the holidays and how consumerism is rampant. And this movie's worshiping consumerism, because they call the mall a sanctuary. It's Whitey's favorite place and all this blah, blah, blah stuff. And these mascots of these brands help Davey find himself, But I totally reject that. It's totally not what this film is at all. It's just some random, just random folks who have an English degree or certificate who are analyzing this film who just got out of college or who are going to college. It's not that at all. If you want that, go watch Click. No, I'm joking. But Click is way better than this film. And I think it's cool that we actually watched it first to give context to this film, because that film, it's mostly because he's a dad in that, and that there's a lot to take away from it. But in this, there's very little to take away from Davey's character and somewhat of a redemption arc that he has.
Yeah. I mean, it's just one of those things. It's like, most of it is just a swing and a miss. Like, there's so many areas that it could have been good, and then it just wasn't.
Yeah. So let's move on to our next film, David. Let's go and talk about Klaus. Klaus was directed by Sergio Pablos and Carlos Martinez Lopez. Written by Sergio Pablos, Jim Mahaney, and Zach Lewis. Starring Jason Schwartzman, J.K. Simmons, Rashida Jones, Will Sasso, Joan Cusack, and the famous Norm Macdonald. With a budget of about $40 million, didn't really make any money at the box office because it was a Netflix film, but did make, I believe, 8.8 in the 1 week it was in theaters. With a runtime of 1 hour and 36 minutes, Klaus is a Christmas film, for those unaware. So David, Klaus, it was funny. So this last Saturday, we were going to have youth group at our house. Totally escaped my mind until I got a message from Nicole saying, "Hey, we're supposed to have youth group at your house. What's the plan?" I'm like, "Oh." And then she suggested Klaus, out of all movies to watch, that, or just so happens, The Iron Giant. And so I'm like, well, those are both really good films. But you know what would be really helpful for us, because we got to watch this anyway? Let's watch Klaus. So out of the kindness of my heart, I decided to share Klaus with all the other youth group folks and you as well. I want to just get your thoughts on Klaus. What did you think of this film, this Jason Schwartzman, J.K. Simmons Santa Claus romp that's animated? What do you think?
It's pretty good.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that it's the greatest movie ever made, but it's pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah. What did you connect most with the film?
I like the visual style for sure. Yeah. The voice acting was good, and the characters were, I wouldn't say they're great characters, but they have personalities to them.
Yeah.
They're entertaining to watch. It's one of those films where it's like, this film, I think, is a much better film than 8 Crazy Nights overall, but it's also a more boring film.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
It's very safe.
Okay.
It's very safe. It doesn't take any risks. It doesn't do anything particularly noteworthy.
Mm.
But everything that it does well. So, yeah, if I would definitely say that if, endearing animated holiday stories are your wheelhouse, then this is a movie that you'll enjoy.
Yeah.
For me personally, endearing animated holiday stories are not my wheelhouse. So I can't say that I was like, weeping my eyes out when after this movie, but it was more like I appreciate all the things that it does well.
Yeah. It's funny. This is, I think, my third time watching this. We watched it when it came out in 2019, and we all enjoyed it. And then I think we watched it, a couple years ago. And then this is my third viewing. And in this third viewing, I was honestly kind of turned off by this film. The first big act is very bland, drags on, boring, not very entertaining. Doesn't necessarily need to be, but this is a kid's film. Like, hey, well, let's pick it up a little bit, okay? But it does take its time. And about, 20-ish minutes into the film, we're introduced to the Klaus character and who he is and how Jesper, the main character, meets him. And then the film gets going. And you're like, all right, here we go. We're starting to see stuff happen here. And for those unaware, Klaus is about a male postman, the son of a very famous mail company of some kind, and the owner of the company decides to have his son Jesper, who's a spoiled brat, finally send out into the world and be in charge of being a postman in a town. But he gives him the hardest one possible, a town where there's no mail at all, called Smearensburg. Thank you. And so he gives him an impossible task to teach him a lesson because he's a spoiled brat. Voiced by Jason Schwartzman, Jesper heads off into this land and is met with a brutal, feudal living community that's at odds with each other, two warring factions, school teacher that is selling fish, and somebody named Klaus, who is the local woodsman. Pretty interesting stuff. I would say that, yeah, I like it overall. I don't think it's a fantastic film, but I had zero expectations going in. I heard basically nothing about the film. I think Chelsea watched it, said we had to sit down and watch it, and we watched it. I'm like, okay, what is this? Kind of like the same thing we did the other night. All right, this is okay, and even some of the humor is kind of awkward, and I'm like, oh, okay, I don't know, I'm not jiving with this. All right, I'm not into this. And then once Klaus is introduced, J.K. Simmons, then it starts picking up. You're like, oh, this makes perfect sense. He's a postman. He's Santa Claus. He has to deliver stuff. This makes perfect sense. So all the pieces kind of like align. And that's what this whole film's kind of about for me, is it's all these little pieces that are set up and then they all like congruently meet together. You have the two factions warring against each other. You have the teacher, you have the Jesper, and you have Klaus, and they all, for some random reason, work together. And it's very, I think it's very well framed, and it's well paced, and maybe except for maybe the beginning part, like it's slow, but it's very smartly put together, is how I would say, in terms of the characters, the feelings, the payoffs. The animation's beautiful. This was, a mostly 2D animated film, with 3D effects onto 3D models. The 2D animation onto 3D models, from what I understand, and very heavy use of some volumetric lighting in this film, which is utilized very well, I would say. In fact, this was apparently the first film where volumetric lighting was like, it's usually used in video games, right? But in this film, they wanted to utilize that to a more efficient degree, I guess. And they did a really good job. The guy who directed it, or one of the directors, basically has worked in like DreamWorks and Pixar, and he's also randomly done the Banner Saga games as a character designer. And he's been part of the Despicable Me franchise, the Banner Saga games, all the DreamWorks animation stuff, Turning Red from Pixar, as well as Luca, Coco, Cars 3, And the list goes on and on. Epic, Cars 2, Kung Fu Panda as a character designer, Shrek the Third, the original Cars, Madagascar, basically like every Gen Z's childhood movie, including The Road to El Dorado. So this guy has an immense track record and has been in the industry a long time, with the first notable thing I would say being on the Goofy movie, which is interesting. So this guy's been in the industry a long time. Seems like he was given the reins along with his other co-director on a pretty big project from Netflix. And with $40 million, that's not a whole lot of money compared to some of the stuff that I've just listed here. Like Pixar films are in excess of $200 million sometimes. The same thing with Despicable Me films. Those aren't cheap either. But on a $40 million budget, the film looks as good as it does. And it's also just pretty dang good. So those are my general thoughts on it. But I was just interested. Like, you've never seen it and this is your first time watching it. And yeah, I don't know. I like it. It's aight. All right. Let's go into some of the trivia here. Director Sergio Pablos had wanted to do a traditionally animated feature film, but he wanted to see how the animation would have evolved without the switch to computer-generated animation. So the studio used CGI lighting techniques with hand-drawn animation to create a unique animation style for the story. Director also, let's see. This is the first traditionally hand-drawn animated movie to make use of volumetric lighting and texturing to give it a more 3D-like look. And then number 4, Netflix reported that the film was viewed over 30 million times in its just first month on the platform. Number 4, Norm Macdonald's final feature film role. This was the last film I believe he did. He passed away. Was it early 2020?
Yeah.
Is that right? Something like that. And I gotta say, man, every time I heard his voice in this, I just had a huge smile on my face. Like, I don't know why. Like, I'm not a huge Norm Macdonald fan, but to hear him in an animated role, just, I don't know, it was so delightful. What do you think of him in this?
Yeah, he's definitely great. His character is the standout one in this movie for sure. You know, like all the voice acting is great, and the characters all the characters are at least serviceable. There's not like any really bad characters. But yeah, Norm Macdonald's character as the Mogans or whatever, the ferryman.
Yeah.
He really stands out. He really stands out.
Yeah, he's great, and he's got that great demeaning like humor that just matches just the scenario perfectly. So, next one is this was the last film animator Mary Lesher worked on. The film is dedicated to her, and her credits include Aladdin, Hercules, Pocahontas, Lilo and Stitch, Brother Bear, The Lion King, Fantasia 2000, and the John Henry short also made by Disney Animation Studios. Yeah. So Sergio Pablos found working with Netflix. This is one of those IMDb things where I'm like, I don't know about this, but this is what it says here. Sergio Pablos found working with Netflix was quite different from other studios. He would still be given notes on creative choices the studio thought he should make, but the difference with Netflix was that these were just suggestions and not mandatory. So, I mean, I could buy that, sure. Netflix is more lenient in that kind of stuff. Anyway, and then Klaus was nominated for Best Animated Feature Film at the Academies and won Best Animated Feature at the Annie Awards and BAFTAs, along with many other wins and nominations from various award shows. So that's all the trivia I got for you about Klaus. You ready to dive into it, Dave?
Indeed.
All right. So Klaus opens up with a very, kind of like how letters are made. They're in this factory, and in this like fictional world we're in, this postman company or establishment is extremely well put together. It's like basically a boot camp almost in a lot of ways. And then we're introduced to Jasper, a spoiled little blonde brat who his daddy owns this whole thing. And then he gets a letter from his papa, and he is summoned back to where his dad is at. So basically what happens is the dad's like, hey, you know what? You are doing a terrible job in this company, and I want better from you. And I'm going to actually reward you for all the work you have done over the years. I'm going to send you all the way over here to Smearensburg. Just, you've got 1 year, in fact, to deliver 6,000 letters and then you will be rewarded again by returning home if you can accomplish this task. So Jesper is like, come on, Dad. Remember when I was a little kid and I'd help you with the letters, And then his dad kicks him out and he is delivered over to Schmierensburg after a very, very long travel there. We are then introduced, once arriving to, I think, the port there, we're introduced to, is it Mogens?
Yeah, Mogens.
Mogens, our Norm Macdonald character. Jesper says, hey, yo, I need you you're the boatman, right? Yeah, I'm the boatman. Can you deliver me over there? Yeah, I guess so. Jasper is asking, why is it so cold here? And he's like, well, we're actually in a little bit of a heat wave, So just some funny banter back and forth. We get Jasper entering the city. I gotta say, the lighting is really beautiful in this at this moment. We're introduced to a town full of very sharp and jagged edges in terms of design. Ships crashed into buildings. A very almost Dr. Seuss-esque kind of landscape, I would say. It reminds me of the Oobleck book, to a certain extent, at least in the terms of design. And the art style, I just gotta say, it's beautiful, David. It's you could tell that the guy who worked on this has worked in the industry for a long time. He knows what he wants. He knows what he wants to do. And just the design, the kind of Tim Burton-esque design on some characters as well, to give them a more darker tone, works very well. The use of lighting in this is really good. And yeah, it's just beautiful overall. As we're entering the town, Mogens says, hey, you see that bell over there? Go ahead and ring it, and you'll have your announcement that you're here. Go ahead. There'll be a band, a bunch of hors d'oeuvres, all this kind of stuff. And so Jesper's like, all right, cool, great. And so he rings it, and then boom, a ton of folks just burst through the windows, the doors, out of their houses with weapons in hand, and they're all going into the middle where he's at. But then it turns out they're not going to the middle where he's at. There's two sides going at each other. So there's one side, there's like a mom handing her kids like slingshots to fight them. So it's one side's a bunch of ginger looking fellas, and the other side's a bunch of dark haired looking fellas. And they meet in the middle, clash. Jesper just tries to survive and is running around and successful in staying alive. But is just horrified at the warring going on around him. Kids are biting kids. Little girl's got a carrot. And, well, he doesn't know what to make of it. And Mogen's like, oh, that's not what the bell meant. And so he rings it again. The fighting stops. And we're introduced to what these two sides are. Basically, the two sides... I'm so sorry. I don't remember the names. Ellingbo is one, and the other side is... I don't remember. But Ellingbo's and another one. So basically, these two sides have been warring for a long time, as we're told. And who is this? The postman. Oh, wow, we have another one they sent us. And so Jesper's introduced the two leaders of the town, one in charge of one side and the other, respectively. And so... Also, one played by Joan Cusack and the other by Will Sasso, which I didn't know was Will Sasso until I always forget watching this. That's Will Sasso. God, I love Mad TV. But yeah, so we're introduced to him. He runs away from them, and then they start fighting again. He runs away. He goes into the schoolhouse, and this is where we're introduced to our character Alva, who's the school teacher, but in reality, she's a fish shop seller. So he goes in, there's a bunch of dead fish hanging everywhere, and she goes and basically explains to him as she's chopping up fish and preparing them to sell that this town is where Crumbs and Ellingbo's are fighting, and there's this big feud. What are you doing here? You need to get out of here, unless you're going to buy something. He decides to leave. Mogens finds him. Before he leaves, though, he does find out that Alva was originally the school teacher, but she says, why would I want to teach a bunch of kids that are just going to fight each other all the time?
She's the school teacher, but nobody's sending their children to school.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
That's what it is. Nobody's sending their children to school, because if they were to send their children to school, then there's a chance that they might fraternize with members of the other family.
Oh, okay.
And the feud would be broken or whatever,
Yeah. Yeah.
So is since she can't, teach children, she has to make money somehow, so she sells fish out of the schoolhouse.
The fish look just disgusting, by the way. The way they're animated and all that, just real nasty looking. Anyway, Mogens finds him. He's like, there you are. Let me take you to your home. So he takes him to the post office in the town, which is up the hill. And it's an old dilapidated building that's falling apart in all manner. In fact, there's some firewood. There's a bunch of chickens in all of the mailboxes or mail carrier holders. And he's like, oh, no. What am I going to do? And he's like, look, you're the postman. You got to suck it up and do your job. And I don't think you're going to get very far, kid. Good luck. And he shuts the door on him. And basically Jesper's like being a whiny little baby. He's out of his comfort zone, his element. He is in a terrible place and he wants to go home to daddy. We're then revealed to a scene where Alva is putting money into a savings jar inside a fish for safekeeping. She's saving up for something. We are yet to reveal what that is.
Well, no, she already says it. She tells Jesper.
Oh, to get herself out of there.
Yeah, she's saving up money so that she can move and start fresh somewhere else.
Yeah. Okay. And then we get Jesper waking up, having to... the latrine is in another like building, but it's only held up by like 2 pieces of wood, and he has to cross a giant bridge, and it's like swaying back and forth. It's really pretty funny. And so he gets up, he starts his day, and he's like, well, I guess I'll go look for letters. So he goes out on the town and checks all the mailbox, and he's like, any letters? And every single one's empty. Because in a society that has a feud that goes on for centuries and that has no use in finding common ground or seeking connection, there's no connection to be made with sending letters back and forth. So as we're going through this montage of him checking mailboxes, he's asking people what's going on and if they have any letters or packages. And we're basically shown much more examples of people fighting back and forth, throwing spears at each other. They're opening up shops, but not many people are buying things. It's mostly just a town of just 2 warring factions. Pretty simple. Yeah, this first beginning is it doesn't do anything super notable, but it's all introductory stuff. It's all laying the groundwork for what comes next. There's a funny scene where Jesper picks up a letter or picks up a drawing from a kid that dropped it out the window. And he's like, hey kid, I'll give it back to you if you give me a penny. He's like, what's the penny for? It's for postage. I'm going to mail you this back to you. And as he's doing this, his father has 2 hound dogs and he's watching all this happen. He's like, oh, I'm not going to do that, and then he sends the 2 dogs after him and he runs away. Again, the age-old tale. Dogs don't like the mailman. So let's see. After lots and lots of attempts to find letters, packages, get any kind of form of communication out of these people, he is left high and dry. I think he's been here at this point for like a few months, I want to say. And then it's interesting. So Mogen comes in, he's like, hey, I'm just seeing if there's any mail here. I'm sure you got, I'll help you with the heavier bags. You got probably a lot this month, huh? And then he's on his desk, Jesper's sad, and he's like just moping around. But as Mogens is talking to him, the wind from outside blows in, and it's blowing onto the map that Jesper has up in the office. And as it's blowing, you see the little flap in the corner of the map is waving in the wind, and it actually goes all the way back, revealing a house in the upper right corner of the map of the whole city, island, I should say. And then Jesper is taken aback by this. It catches his eye, and he asks Mogens, "What is that?" Mogens responds and says, "Oh, that's where the lumber."
The woodsman lives.
Sorry, woodsman. Thank you. That's where the woodsman lives. And so Jesper decides to trek all the way to the woodsman's house. After arriving to the place, it's pretty old. It seems to be kept up to a certain extent, but maybe not too much. He decides to enter the house. He knocks on the door. He's able to open the door. He enters in, and the wind shuts it tight. And he's locked in there. He finds a lantern, lights it up with a match, and is exploring and finds lots of toys on all of the shelves. As he's going through the house, he honestly, I was out for much of this movie, so I don't remember all the details that happened, but he's exploring the house. We see a silhouette of a bunch of toys. He gets scared of a bunch of toys because outside you see the axe of the woodsman, I believe, of the woodsman. And then we revealed the woodsman in the house. And it's this giant hulking figure. And Jesper is just scared is just taken aback and frightened, runs away, and believes he's chasing him. But no, it seems like the woodman followed him outside, but stayed near his house and watches him run away. So as we see Jasper leave, it turns out Jasper left his bag here. The woodsman picks it up, is about to head inside, and then the wind picks up a letter and drops it in front of Klaus, as we're revealed to who this character is. So Klaus picks up the letter, and then we're cut to Jesper trying to leave the town, packing up his bags. He's going to throw them in the carriage. He's getting in the carriage. He's running down the way, and Klaus, with his woodsman axe, is standing there, and he crashes, and he thinks he's going to kill him. It's nighttime. There's a storm brewing. And Klaus gives him his letter back and asks to be given a ride. And so Jesper doesn't have much choice. He's intimidated by this fella, gives him a ride in his carriage, goes into town, and he has this package and gives it to Jesper. Just says, "What do you want me to do with this?" He's like, "You're the postman. Deliver it." And so he tries fitting it in the mailbox. That doesn't work. He says, "Well, how about you go up there?" He's like, "I'm too big." He's like, "You can fit in there better." So he goes through to this house where it just so happened to be where the boy and his drawing was. And this house has 2 of the guard dogs there. There's so many traps, bear traps, and all these kind of things out in the yard. It seems impossible. So how the animation's so funny too. Jesper goes back to Klaus behind the fence, and he's like, "Come on, man, let me out. I want to stop. Don't put me in this situation." And then the dogs start running at him, and then Klaus sees a board. He sees, oh, okay. He steps on the board. Boom. Jesper goes flying onto the house, and the dogs are perplexed as well. And he's entered the house, and he has to deliver the package. We go through him trying to find a way out, but he ends up leaving the package there, gets outside the house. He meets Klaus outside. The dogs are scared, runs away because of Klaus. And then they peek through the window as Jesper's trying to run away, and Klaus sees the boy picking up the package. He opens it up, and he sees it's a toy frog. He starts playing with it. And we get just a really sweet scene of this boy playing with this toy, running back and forth, and we see this look on the woodsman's face. And it's just a look of endearment and of love, I would say. Watching this kid play with a toy. All right, so the next morning, cuts to Jesper out in his postman's office, the mail office, and he gets a knock on his door, and he answers the door, and it turns out there's some kids saying, "Hey, we got some letters," and he says, "What? What are you talking about?" We need also. Can you stamp it for us? We have pennies, we have money, and so he's like, "All right, here we go. Yeah, I can actually mail letters now." And so basically we go through a montage of Jesper asking the kids "Hey, you want a toy?" And so he's in the shadows in every scene of this montage, and he's going to all the kids and hey, you want a sundial? He's he's saying you want a toy. And he's like, if you write a letter to Klaus or the woodsman, you will get a toy. And so we go through the montage of him showing the kids how to do this, how to put the letters in. He makes little bundles for them to do it with pencils and paper. And it's just a really cute scene. Also, the music choice is kind of weird in this, David. I wonder what you think of this. It's kind of like during either these montages or other parts of this film, there are kind of bits of jazz sprinkled out through it and different songs that are kind of more upbeat. But I don't know. What do you think of this? Does it fit the film? Does it utilized well? What do you think of this?
Yeah, the music in some of these montages have strange music choices, I would say. They're Yeah, I'm not sure exactly what they were going for with these. I mean, they kind of work, but they're kind of jarring too. They're like, whoa, this is like not the mood that you know, that the movie has normally. So I have mixed feelings about it. Like overall, the music's great, but just these like certain montages where it like turns into like, like a funk song. I'm like, okay,
It's jarring.
yeah,
It is jarring because you're used to like this weird, not medieval, but like earlier century kind of setting, and now you get all this jazz randomly just enter into the mix. I will say so though. I will sasso this. This kind of reminds me of the Peanuts movie. Did you ever see that, David?
Which Peanuts movie?
The animated one that was like made by the guys who did Ice Age. Did you ever watch that?
No, I didn't watch that.
It's actually a really good love letter to the Peanuts comics and done really, really well. There is one song in there that the artist is escaping me, but it's like a pop song and it's in there. And it's weird. You're like, oh God, is Snoopy going to start twerking or something? Oh God, what's going to happen? But actually, the song is utilized twice in the film, and it's the only song in the film, and it's actually fits surprisingly well. It's kind of like the opposite effect to this. It is a little jarring starting to hear the song, and it's like has a small build up to it, like quiet, and then it goes louder. And it's only used in 2 specific scenes, but it's utilized exceptionally well. Versus this, where it's like, oh, let's just get this in montages, So in the next scene, we get Klaus being greeted again by Jesper with a bag full of letters saying, hey, you know what? I was thinking, since you got all them toys just collecting dust in your house, maybe you could, give another kid a toy, And as he's saying this, he's super nervous because Klaus is tying a rope together and chopping wood. And he's like, oh my God, is he going to kill me? And he basically hands him a rope and it looks like a noose. And he's like, all right, here we go. And he starts putting it around his neck. And then Klaus grabs what he was making out of the wood, which was a birdhouse, and throws it up in the tree, along with the hundreds of other birdhouses he has been making. So something's going on with these birdhouses. He then agrees to, I think after some discussion, they go on to discuss, and then I think he agrees to go ahead and do this for Jesper. Kind of a kind act that will inspire another, as we will soon be revealed. The reason why he says this is because the wind comes back and circles around Jesper, because Klaus wants nothing to do with him. So Jesper goes ahead and tries to make his case. And as he's making his case again after the news thing, the wind goes around and like hovers around Jesper. And Klaus recognizes like, oh shoot, okay, this must be destiny, is what the audience gather. It will be revealed what this wind means later. So as we're going through, we're cut back to some children, a child playing with the toy, the little frog thing, the child we were introduced to earlier. And one of them gingers, David, he saw him playing with it, and the ginger decided to go in and try to play with the toy with him. And those 2 kids are like, hey, let's play together. This is great. And they have a good time playing. And then their 2 parents freak out because these are our sworn enemies. We then get a scene where these kids are taken by their parents to, their respective sides of the warring factions, and are explaining to the audience what this feud entails and how long it's been going on for. It's basically been going on for since the dawn of mankind, apparently. And throughout centuries and millennia that they have had this feud, and they must respect tradition. So just like Fiddler on the Roof, these kids probably won't listen to everything they have to say, and we'll see what happens in the end. Maybe there'll be a fiddler in the end, David. Who knows? Anyway, the next scene, we are greeted to Jesper and Klaus at nighttime going through and delivering some packages. Very haphazardly and fails, succeeds in the end, but Jesper just gets his butt handed to him in a lot of these scenes. We then get to it, and it turns out he delivered a total of 3 packages, it looks like. And he has, over 5,000 to go. All right, so let's see what happens next. We get more kids wanting to deliver letters to get more toys. We are introduced to a character that doesn't speak English. And this was a very interesting choice. Why is she, not speaking English? There's no subtitles. We kind of expected there to be subtitles. There's not.
Yeah. That was kind of the weird thing, is they kind of like expect you to like just know that there's like
or like to know what she's saying.
Well, there's like this like there's like the Sami or whatever.
Yeah, Sami is her name.
No, it's not their name.
Oh, that's the people's name.
It's the people.
Oh, okay.
They're people that are living in this world. And they're like, so they're like more or less kind of like the weird, like the kind of like the indigenous sort of tribal peoples that live in some of the climates of like the Northern European climate. And yeah, so they just kind of like exist in this world, and it's, I mean, they make it, they come into play more in the end, but like at this point in the story, it's just like,
yeah, what's this person doing?
Yeah, what's this like little girl like who's not speaking English, and you don't know what she wants or anything. She's just kind of like talking to the postman.
Yeah.
And he doesn't understand a word of what she's saying. And he's like a jerk to her.
Yeah, he's like a jerk to her.
And he just sends her on his way.
Yeah. And speaking of being a jerk, there's kids that go up to him after the little girl that speaks no language talks to him. And they're like, we can't read and write. We want to send a letter. Can you write it out to us? And he's like, sorry, kids, sucks to be you. And so they're like, how about you? And he's like, wait, I have an idea. Cuts to Alva in the schoolhouse, brushing her teeth, getting her day started. And the kids are just sitting there in the classroom surrounded by all these fish, waiting for her to teach. And she's like, what? She tracks him down, confronts him, manhandles him, and says, what's wrong with you? Why'd you send these kids my way? And he's like, look, I'm a dreamer. I kind of want to make a difference. He's kind of like playing coy and is lying to her, but he's telling her like, I want to make a difference. What's the reason you became a teacher, huh? Because I became a postman, blah, blah, blah. And she kind of thinks about it and then, walks away. Mogan makes some offhanded comment saying how, yeah, fella, you're doing what you can, man, but everybody's going to see through you eventually. And then she walks away. So then we get a montage of them delivering presents at night. Jesper's going door to door, or chimney to chimney, and doing this. And it turns out he's putting stuff in stockings. And then you see the kids say, oh, hey, he put some stuff in my stocking. If you put your stocking out, then he'll put toys in it. And all these little bits that you see from Santa Claus lore is kind of revealed as this delivery process is happening. We cut to Alva delivering, being annoyed that these kids are here. And then she has one kid go up and writes her name and shows her how to do it. The kid's really excited to learn, and all the kids say, can I write my name? Can I write my name? They're just excited to be there. And so Alva needs school supplies, and she wants to kind of teach these kids. So she's like, you know what? Maybe I should grab my stash that I have to get out of here. Just a little bit. I'll take a little bit. And as she takes a little bit out, then we cut to Jesper and Klaus having too many presents in the carriage. Klaus says, too heavy, time to unload it. So he unloads it, and Jesper's like, yo. He's like freaking out. He's like, how am I going to get out of here if I can't deliver all these packages and these letters? So he's like, the horse, it can't do it, dude. So we have to unload some letters and packages here, some packages. And so as he's trying to brainstorm how to fix the situation, he sees reindeer. Long story short, Klaus helps and feeds the reindeer moss of some kind, and then goes ahead and hooks up the reindeer, and boom, we have Santa Claus with reindeer. Pretty interesting. The next day, or that night, Jesper skips over a kid because giving a present, because it turns out that kid was the dude that made fun of him, threw snowballs at him, and was just a bully, you know? And so he's like, he sucks to be you, kid, and gives him a lump of coal in his stocking. Goes ahead the next morning, and as the kids line up in front of Jesper's door of the mail office, they start giving him letters. He's saying thank you, and then that kid throws a snowball, and he's like, "What's the big deal, postman? What's the big deal?" This is my favorite scene in the movie. He's like, "What's the big deal, man? Why I get a present?" He's like, "Well, because you were naughty. That's why you don't get a present." And he's like, "Well, how do you know I was naughty?" And then he's like, "Well," and he's trying to think, and he's like, "Klaus has eyes everywhere." And he like scares the kid by saying this. He's like, "What? He can see you when you're sleeping." He's like, "What?" And then a just dope rap song starts playing. "Oh, that's what you get when you mess with the postman," as he's like swaggering back to the post office after he like just like tells this kid off. It's great. We then get a montage of all the children improving their village and excited about writing and doing stuff. And so to be good kids, once they figure out once you're naughty, you won't get any toys, they decide to be good and do good and kind acts around town in their at their home, at other people's home. The guy that the guy who had his kid the guy that had his kid, the guy with the kid with the frog breaks his leg or something, and the gingers take care of him, and it's like a nice mutual nice mutual act of kindness. There's a funny bit where like we picked the berries on Mrs. Things instead of stealing the berries on the neighbor lady. We put them in a basket and gave them to her. Then she came to our house and gave us like gave us I don't know what it was, jam or something. And then after that, my mom decided to bake a cake for her. And so it's like this kill them with kindness kind of thing. It's really adorable. And all the like, you could tell they got real kids to play these kids. It's really cute and just endearing. And we see just, acts of kindness after another. All these letters start pouring in. The kids are making a difference in the community. A generation is changing, David. It's kind of crazy. And it's inspiring the older generation to put down their weapons and put down their pitchforks and kind of do good for once, One act of kindness inspires another, as they say. And we get that again and again and again. We see people who used to be warring against each other accept them in their homes. We see the guy that broke his leg make a playground for everybody. Alva is spending more money on teaching materials and enjoying being a teacher again. And as everything's starting to go good, we get the what are they called? The crumbs and the
Elling bows.
We find out that they're going to have a secret meeting. Also around this time, we get some dialogue about Klaus and more backstory about him. But it turns out that's cut short because the Ellingbows and the Crumbs made an ambush for them and are trying to destroy them and stop their efforts. They escape them and go off this giant ramp and fly into the sky. It's seen by a kid, and wow, he starts spreading the rumor that, well, Santa Claus is flying. You're not going to believe what I saw. And then after Jesper regales Klaus with this information, Klaus gives out a mighty fine laugh, and he says, "Oh!"
Yes, indeed.
Yes, that does happen. All right, so what's next? So we get introduced again to the Sammy the character who's of the Sammy people, the little girl we don't understand. There's a meeting between the Ellingbows and Crumbs. They decide to have a truce. I can't remember what happens after this. I think we get more backstory with Jesper and Klaus. Oh yes, Jesper wants to make like a toy shop with Klaus, and
it's because the toys are all gone.
That's right.
The toys are all gone, and Klaus's original thing was he was just going to offload the toys that he had, and then he was going to be done with it. But that's not enough letters to get him home. So he basically tries to manipulate Klaus into trying to make more toys, while not letting on that he is doing it for a selfish motive, you know?
Yeah.
He's trying to play it up like, oh, you know, you bring so much joy to all these children, and
yeah, totally like tries to, like you said, manipulate him into the situation. Well, it turns out while he's trying to do this, it's revealed the true intention of all these toys. Jasper grabs a drape and pulls it down, and it uncovers something that Klaus didn't want him to see. It shows two little wooden figures with 6 slots beneath them, and those wooden figures, obviously one is Klaus, and obviously it seems to be one was his wife. And there was 6 little like holes underneath, potentially, and Klaus goes on to explain that that's where the children would go. So it seems like he had a wife of some kind. They wanted kids, and it is revealed later on that yes, they wanted children, and the children never came, and he made toys for them. So there's that. Jesper's defeated, goes back to the post office. The Eskimo chick shows up again and starts talking to him. And Jesper's like, all right, you know what? You must know something. So I need to figure out I can't stand you anymore. I must figure out what you're saying. And Jesper goes to Alva to try to figure out what she's saying and how to understand her. Because she wants to write a letter and she keeps handing him a letter, but he doesn't understand anything she's saying. So that night, Jesper and Alva stay up most of the night, I would guess, and just try to figure out what the Sami person is saying. And it's where we're introduced to like the main song of this film titled Invisible, which is very beautiful. I want to hear your thoughts about this, David, but I did look up the orchestral instrumental version of this song, and it's much better. I think the live instrumental version, which is using this, is like the best version, because when you just look up the song, it's just like a generic pop version and doesn't really hit like this one in this film does. What do you think of Invisible?
It's saccharine, overproduced.
Yeah.
It's a pop song. What can I say?
Yeah. I think it's sweet, but
Yeah.
I can see where you're coming from.
Yeah, you're right. It is, but I completely don't care about that at all.
All right.
Like
All right,
a song being sweet is like, and so your point. It's like,
yeah, there's some sweet moments in 8 Crazy Nights. Your point?
well, there's.
I'm joking.
No, I'm not talking about emotion. I'm talking about like the song is like sweet and saccharine sounding, but it's like whatever. That's not moving.
All right.
There's like emotion comes from like to get an emotional response out of me requires a little bit more depth than some pretty music.
Okay. Well, while this pretty music is playing, we're showing that they finally figure out what she wants. She wants this toy. She wants like this certain type of toy. So Jesper does his best to try to make the toy out of the wood material he has. I believe he took it from Klaus and is just trying to make this toy. He's done a terrible job. We find him asleep at his desk. We cut back to Klaus at some point in this, and Klaus sees all the artwork that Jesper did of him and himself, like in part of this toy factory. And Jesper's actually he's like not a half bad animator and designer. Like maybe he should just do that for a living instead of being a postman, you know, like maybe he'll do a children's book one day. Like the kid's got something, you know? So anyway, Klaus goes to him, wakes him up, continues to make the toy with him. And then they go across, meet Mogan. They go, miles and miles away outside of the island, and they deliver Sammy her toy. They stay there overnight in the blisteringly cold dead of winter, and basically just stay up until they wake up and she opens her toy. And the joy on Jesper's face is the same joy that we kind of seen in other characters, including Klaus. Really beautiful stuff, David. It made me emotional. There were several youth group kids in our audience that were like, this is so sweet. Oh my gosh. Like, there's actually generally some crying that happened when we all watched this. Not from me, but from some of the other kids. So, yeah, take that for what you will. But there's some sweet parts in this. But anyway, we are then told of the complete backstory of Klaus. He goes through and tells him about him and his wife wanting no ton of kids. The kids never happened. And then by the time, and then at some point, his wife gets sick and passes on. Really, really sad stuff. It is revealed that the wind seems to be the wife's way of speaking to Klaus, or he sees the wind as a way of her speaking to him. And he also reveals she loved birdhouses, and that's why he has all the birdhouses. Fun fact, I was watching an interview with the director. He said that J.K. Simmons did this whole monologue about the wife in one take. And they just kept that one take. And I was like, whoa, dang, really? And he's like, man, when he was doing it at the end, he's like, was that good? And he's like, that was beautiful. Great job. We don't need another one. And just kept that one take. So it's pretty funny. So he calls Jesper his friend. He's excited to make more toys after this reconciliation. And they get the green light and they're starting to make more toys. Jesper starts to have some regret, I think, in this part of the film, because he's starting to see that all this good stuff is happening to the town and to the folks and to the kids that was all started from his selfish motivations. But there was an act of kindness in that selfish motivation. The act was still done in kindness, even though his motives weren't right. It's kind of interesting looking at it, that yes, the big quote in the film is one kind act inspires another, but doesn't really dive into the motivations of that, really.
Yeah.
So.
It's more like he does good by accident.
Yeah.
Essentially, because the quote is one selfless act inspires another. And nothing that Jesper does is selfless.
No.
Or at least in the beginning of the movie, but he kind of like does good by accident, and that sort of like inspires other people to start doing good, and then you have the chain of selfless acts inspiring selfless other acts.
Could you imagine if that was the case with 8 Crazy Nights, David? Can you imagine if like, oh, it just so happens that because of knocking down Whitey with a porta potty, it turns out it saved a building from catching on fire, and Davey took the blame. You know? Like, imagine if that whole film was like, the whole town's perspective was like, oh, wow, Davey's making a change for the better. He must have really learned his lesson. And it's just one selfish act out of another, but it just is interpreted wrong. That, oh, he saved a school bus of children. Oh, he saved the old lady from dying from a car accident. Like, just random stuff like that. That would have been hilarious. But I don't know why I'm further psychoanalyzing 8 Crazy Nights. But let's move on, shall we?
Indeed.
So, moving on, the Crumbs and the Ellienbows who have this truce find out that Jesper only needs 6,000 letters and he's out of here, because he made a giant chart on his wall. So they go to the post office, see that, and then they're like, oh shoot, okay, let's make a plan around that. In the meantime, we get Jesper in town. He sees the schoolhouse is like put back together and is beautiful. He goes inside, finds Elva teaching all the children and her teaching fashion, and she's enjoying it. He says, what's going on? What's going on here? And then she tells him, yo, the whole town is changing. Have you not hung out in the town at all? Which is also we're like, wait, what? I guess Nick said it right. There was a lot of night shifts that he had to do. So he was probably sleeping. But anyway, so she takes him to the town square basically. And the where the bell is covered with Christmas lights and holly and all this wonderful stuff. And there's a whole party happening in the middle of the town, and everybody's in harmony. Jesper's really taken aback by this. We then get some help for Jesper and Klaus as they're putting together the toy shop, and the people the Sammy people come and help them and assist them with creating this toy shop and getting this production of toys on the line, because Christmas is coming quick. With 2 days to go, Klaus descends. We cut to a scene where Klaus descends the stairs in full red garb of the classic Santa Claus outfit in the style of those Sammy people. And Jesper's like, man, you look great. This is great. Oh, there's a knock on the door. Let me go to the door. And before I continue, turns out the Crumbs and the Ellingbows were writing fake letters and sending them off with Mogan. But Mogan was unaware of it. They just like tossed a ton of bags onto his ship without him noticing. And it turns out that he got 14,000 letters done by that simple act of a selfless act, apparently. No, not really. Anyway, so as he's answering the door, his father is there. And it turns out Jesper's dad's like, I can't believe it. Like, you did it. You actually did what I thought you couldn't do. And it seems like you're on for the better. So as a reward, you get to come home with me right now if you want. And he's like, right now? He's like, yeah, let's go. And then the Crumbs and Ellingbows reveal themselves. And yes, they are like, oh, we're so proud of you, man. You've done such a great thing for the community by helping us deliver so many letters throughout this year. And we're just so grateful for you. And, they're totally like, encourage children to write letters and go to school. This is so great. And as they're telling the dad this, Jesper turns around and sees that Alva, Klaus, and all the Sammy people are just watching them there. And it's like, you lied to us, dude. Like, you didn't have any selfless acts, selfless motives at all. It was totally your own selfish, ambition. So we get a whole scene of Jesper's defeated. He's going home. He should be happy to go home, but he's not. He's grown quite attached to the town he's moved into. And so Mogan, in his gaslighting way, sees a very sad Jesper and regales to the dad and says, hey, you know what? That guy isn't really acting normal. He seems really sad. You know what? I wouldn't worry about it. It's not like a bunch of bitterness can set in from that kind of behavior or something to that extent. And so the dad sits down and looks at him. We cut to the ship taking off and Mogan sailing it off into the fog. And Sammy is running to the dock as the ship's taking off and is crying because she wants to see Jasper go away. She doesn't want him to go. And then, boom, Jasper says hi to her and he didn't leave. So he tells her what happened. He said that his dad was proud of him for what he did. He just came out and just told him the whole truth of what he's been doing there all this time. And yeah, it was like selfish, but he couldn't believe like the difference he made for the positive. And he said that the dad was really impressed with what he had to do. And it's funny because he's talking to Sammy in this scene and Sammy like understands him perfectly. And he seems like, he only half understands the Sammy little girl. And it's just a really cute back and forth.
What's happening is I don't think neither of them understand each other. I think what's happening because this happens a couple times in the movie.
Yeah.
I think what's happening is she's trying to talk to him, not really understanding that there's a language barrier just because she's too young to.
Yeah.
And he is like basically kind of like he's so like self-centered that he like replies to her even though he has no idea what he's saying, as if he knows what she's saying, and as if she's saying things to like further his own internal like dialogue that he's having with himself.
Yeah. She's basically acting as his conscience at this point in this scene.
But it's like it's totally not that. He's just kind of like pretending like it is because he's such a self-centered butthole.
Well, this self-centered butthole decides to make a change at this moment, David, because he goes back and it turns out the Ellingbows and the Crumbs are going to steal all the presents on Christmas night from Klaus and Alva and all the people. And as they're loading the presents into the sleigh, they get there and they're like, hand over the presents or we're going to tear down the toy shop. And so Klaus is like, hey, just don't hurt anybody. You can have them. Go for it. And so as it's being loaded into in front of the Crumbs and Ellingbows, Jasper jumps out of nowhere from the building and grabs onto the giant bag of toys, lands it perfectly inside the sleigh, and grabs the reins for the reindeer as Klaus is like sitting in the sleigh. And he's like, come on. And then the reindeer aren't connected at all to the reins and they just slide backward. And Klaus crosses his arms, Jesper starts freaking out, and they roll down the hill, and a chase scene ensues. I gotta say, this chase scene was actually pretty cool, pretty enticing. The animation really kind of shines here in this it's very action heavy scene or sequence, I should say.
Yeah, the only thing is Jesper is not strong enough to stop a sleigh from sliding off a snowy cliff.
Yeah, it's like
that's
some fresh powder too. So
he somehow became the Incredible Hulk for like half a second there. I don't know how, but he did.
Did you know Jesper is Sammy for Hulk, David? So anyway, this whole chase scene happens. One of the Ellie, I think Joan Cusack's character, who I think is part of the Crumbs. Yes, the Crumbs. Jesper, yeah, you're right. He stops the sleigh before it gets to the edge of the cliff. The Crumb chick tosses hits the presents off the edge, and it's all sad. They walk away. Man, it's all so heartbreaking. Klaus is real like down and out about it. And Jesper's like standing up to them. He's like, you know what? I think, I don't know what he says, but he says something inspiring. And then he's like, even though all hope is lost, there's still hope. And then it turns out that the presents weren't actually the toys that they were making. Turns out that whole bag of presents, in quotes, was just full of wrapped up wood, because the real presents were still at the shop. So Klaus was like, did you actually think that we were going to have the real presents out? We knew these guys were coming after us after they got you out of there. So come on, how stupid do you think we are? So yeah, they did a 180 on them, and they still have all the presents. That night, before they go off and deliver him, Klaus and Jesper have a reconciliation, an agreement, and they go out and they deliver everything in time. And they're out watching Christmas morning over the town on some kind of ridge, just happy with their work. Turns out the Ellingbow and the Crumbs' little children love each other. These huge towering Hulk, speaking of Hulk figures, love each other, get married at some point. And there's unity finally in the town in that aspect, whether the Crumbs and Ellingbows like it or not. We then get a montage, ending montage of what life is like after all this happens. Jesper and Alva fall in love, get married. They live in the post office building on the hill where he's at. There's a scene where she walks out, goes to work to the school, gives him a kiss, and goes away. We then pan over to the outside of the screen, and it turns out Mogan is just sitting there waiting for his morning delivery, and he's like, give me a kiss, Jesper. Where's my kiss, Jesper? Basically, it shows that it's him and Klaus being Santa Claus, and they're doing this every year, every Christmas, and doing it well. And they're expanding to more areas. The Sammy are helping them out throughout the years. Jesper grows a mustache years on. And Klaus is getting older and older and older and older, becoming wonderful lifelong friends. Until one day, Jesper's chopping wood. He sees the wind again, and he says, I'm coming, love. And the wind is going up the hill.
Yeah, not Jesper, Klaus.
I'm sorry, Klaus. Yeah, Klaus is growing super old. And he sees the wind blowing up the hill. He knows it's his time to leave. And just like Yoda, he disappears and phases into the wind. After that, Jesper then goes on and tells us that he looked for him everywhere, couldn't find where Klaus went to, didn't have any clue. At this point in the timeline of Klaus, people are older. He's an older man, an older fella now. He's got kids. Little kids are super cute. And him and Elva are, they're married. They got kids. It's Christmas night. He's standing up the stockings, and he basically says, you know what? I looked for him. I never could find him until he returns one night every year. And that one night, I can see my friend again. And then the movie ends.
Yep.
And that was Klaus.
Klaus.
What a picture, as Al Pacino would say in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I would say that this is it's one of those definitely categorically underrated Christmas films, I think. Like when I bust out the Christmas films every year in my family.
I don't think it's underrated so much as just unrated, perhaps.
Maybe. I don't know.
That was
unknown.
That was a joke because unrated is like,
yeah,
like
no, I get you.
Yeah. But yeah, it's more like I just don't think enough. I just don't think a lot of people really know about it.
No,
I mean, sure,
yeah.
it won some awards, but it doesn't seem like it's reached out into the
ether,
the general culture so much.
Yeah, I agree. I don't see many people talking about this except for like in animation circles, really. And that's super niche circles you have to be in to find stuff like this. So if you have Netflix, this was a Netflix like original back in 2019. Totally worth it. If you're listening to this podcast on Christmas Day, we thank you, bro and chick, or whoever you are. If you're working on Christmas Day, also thank you so much for just doing your job. We love you, and thank you for listening to this podcast and us regale about 8 Crazy Nights and Klaus. But yeah, anyway, Klaus, pretty dang good film. I'd recommend it, and I would also recommend, only if you're into Adam Sandler, 8 Crazy Nights. If you've never seen it and you've watched like every single Adam Sandler film, you owe it to yourself to watch 8 Crazy Nights. Like you need to watch this if you love Adam Sandler. Like, I don't even think Thad has seen 8 Crazy Nights. I don't think he
You don't think so?
I would put money that he has. I would give a 50-50. I'd bet 50-50 that Thad hasn't seen 8 Crazy Nights. Because he's a huge Adam Sandler fan.
Yeah, I feel like he has. Just because
I feel like
it's one of those movies. It's one of those movies that if you're exposed to enough Adam Sandler,
oh God, if you're exposed to enough Adam Sandler,
you'll find eventually. And also it came out when it came out to like, it's more of like just the timing of its release, I think
it really did a disservice to itself, just being in that happened to be in that kind of.
Well, I'm saying like Gen X millennial fans of Adam Sandler have probably already seen this movie.
Yeah,
just
definitely.
Because of the timing of its release. So like if there's any younger people out there who happen to be fans of Adam Sandler, you probably missed this movie and you should go back.
You should go back.
Check it out.
You should check this out because it is an experience, let me tell you. Like, yeah, I wouldn't recommend it to a general like audience fella person, but let me tell you, this is a unicorn of its own kind. You get an animated film created by as the forefront with Adam Sandler, with all the Adam Sandler isms.
Yeah. And the sad thing is I really wish this movie had done better commercially, just because I would have loved to seen what more Adam Sandler could have done in the realm of animation.
Yeah.
As it stands, this is Adam Sandler's only animated movie.
Well, yes, that he's in charge of, I would say. Because he's been in Hotel Transylvania's.
He's like a voice actor.
He's a voice actor in those,
more modern animated films. But as far as like traditionally animated films that he actually produces, because it's
Billy Happy
Madison production, so it's like his movie.
Yeah.
As far as that's concerned, it's the only one of its kind.
It really is. And is it worth your time? I guess you'll find out. It's only an hour and 16 minutes.
Yeah.
Can you stand an hour and 16 minutes of pure Adam Sandlerisms in animated form?
Yeah, just unadulterated Adam Sandler.
You're right, David. If this was a success, I would have loved to see what they would have done next. Like, would it be another like 8 Crazy Nights kind of like holiday film? Would it be just an Adam Sandler movie but animated? Would Click been animated? Like,
yeah, the interesting thing is, according to Wikipedia, there was an actual like division of Happy Madison set up specifically for releasing animated films.
And this was the only one.
This was the only one.
Wasn't it called like Meatball something?
Yeah.
Meatball.
Something like that. It was like Meatball Productions or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, man, if we did, here's my nightmare scenario. Okay, just hear me out. If they did get some success with this film, say it made $120 million. That's a lot of money worldwide. Okay, what do we do next? Okay, what's popular? CGI. Okay, let's do CGI Adam Sandler movie now.
Ooh.
That's my worry. Oh, Shrek 2's coming out? Well, I know what I'm going to do. CGI Adam Sandler.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
That would have been something.
That would have been something.
It probably wouldn't have been good, but it would have been something.
We would probably get Rob Schneider as that Mexican guy again, though, in that CGI version. That's in a different timeline.
Well, they would find another minority for him to play.
Play very stereotypically, we'll say.
Because what's he done already? He's done Mexicans. He's done Asians. He's done Arabs.
Yep. That's right. I forgot about that.
I can't think of any other.
I don't think he got that far.
So,
I feel like he was just about to do South African next, but he just didn't quite get there, or Australian.
Yeah. Maybe he could have gotten in on the whole blackface before.
Whoa, he could have
before Robert Downey Jr. Like he was Robert Downey Jr. was the one white guy that was allowed to do it, and after that, it was just no longer possible.
No longer possible. No.
So maybe if Rob Schneider had somehow stolen that opportunity from Robert Downey Jr., maybe we'd have had a black Rob Schneider.
Rob Schneider.
But that never transpired.
Unfortunately. In a different time. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we'll bid you adieu, and thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Snarp Fangle Podcast. We'll catch you on the flip side, and Snarp Fangle on, and Merry Christmas.
Indeed, Merry Christmas. Bye-bye now.